Amy, I hope you can improve the food. It's not very good. What do you mean by not very good? I want better bread, and there are better ovens for baking bread now. Alright, I'll tell the housekeeper, Emmanuela, about it. I'm Amy Anderson, 35 years old, and I work as a full-time FX trader from home. I met my husband, Eric, who's 2 years older than me, at my old job. We worked at a small mail-order company. He worked in the pet food department, and I worked in cosmetics, answering customer calls. Our company didn't follow the labor rules, so we worked a lot of overtime, and usually stayed late. We'd go for drinks once a week to relax after work with some coworkers. At that time, even though we had good pay because of all the overtime, we didn't have time to enjoy it. The only thing we looked forward to was those weekly drinks to cope with how tired we were. I started dating Eric, and we got married 3 years ago. After marriage, I quit my job and stayed home for a while. Then, I started looking for something I could do at home and found FX trading. I read a lot of books, researched online, and studied FX trading. It wasn't easy at first, but I kept learning and eventually became good at it. I bought a computer just for FX trading, opened a trading account, and practiced with small amounts. Over time, I developed my own way of trading and started earning steadily. But my in-laws, Nicholas and Julia, didn't understand what I was doing. Last year, Nicholas retired, and they were living in public housing. Eric invited them to live with us in our 3-bedroom apartment because he thought it would be hard for them to live on their pension alone. I pay the rent for our apartment, and while Eric works, I cover all the living expenses since I started making money with FX trading. Mom, Dad, Amy will take care of the bills, so you don't have to worry, Eric told them. Thank you, Amy, that's very kind, they replied. And that's how I ended up living with Eric's parents. I don't do the housework myself. Emmanuela, our housekeeper, does everything. She's a great cook and helps with all the chores, which gives me more time to study FX trading and write about it. But Nicholas and Julia didn't like that. When they first moved in, they were polite and thankful, but after 2 months, they started saying, "What's the point of having a wife who just stays home and doesn't do any housework? She just sits in front of the computer all day. FX trading is just gambling." They didn't say it directly to me, but I could tell they were talking to Eric about it. Since I was paying for everything, Eric no longer needed to worry about the bills, and he started spending more on his clothes. He always wore custom suits, carried expensive bags, and wore designer shoes. He loved fashion and seemed happy, so he defended me when his parents complained about my work. But recently, Eric's attitude changed. "Amy, you're always sitting in front of the computer, and you never wear makeup or dress up. Don't you think that's boring and unattractive? Do I really need to wear makeup and fancy clothes when I'm just staying at home? It might be fine for you, but it's not good enough for me." "What do you mean not good enough for you? Are you saying I'm not good enough because I don't dress up?" "Exactly. Don't you ever want to dress up for me so I'm more attracted to you?" "Attracted to me? Are you serious? Do I need to dress up for you to find me attractive?" After that conversation, Eric started complaining about me to his parents. One evening, after dinner, I overheard this. "Amy always makes fun of us. She makes us feel bad." "Yeah, it feels like she thinks we're poor just because we used to live in public housing." "I agree, I feel that way too. And the fact that she doesn't do any housework shows she thinks she's better than us. She's just gambling to make money and acts so bossy about it." Anyone can do FX trading. Amy just studied a little on her own and started earning $80,000 a month. I could do that too. "You're right, Eric, you could do it too." I don't like how she acts so arrogant when she's just making money by gambling. She doesn't work hard for it. Anyone can do what she's doing. Plus, she's not even cute. I don't know who she thinks she is. I was working from home, but Eric and I used to have breakfast together before he left for work. Eric still works at the same company we both used to work for, so he comes home late. We should have valued breakfast as our time together, but Eric started skipping it, saying, "Just eat breakfast on the way." Seeing this, Julia said, "Eric's getting tired of you because you don't even do your duties as a wife. That's what happens, Amy." She said this in a sarcastic way. "What do you mean duties as a wife, Julia? If you mean housework, hasn't Emmanuela done it all perfectly? These so-called duties as a wife are outdated." "Outdated? We value the old customs in our family. Your grandmother-in-law used to discipline me a lot." "Discipline? Isn't it enough if the housework is done? I'm paying Emmanuela enough for it. Do you think this is about money? Just because you're paying for everything, doesn't mean you can talk down to us. You shouldn't be bossy about it. Julia, who said this to me, seems to be spending a lot of money on socializing with people her own age in the apartment building now that she doesn't have to pay for living expenses. I sometimes see her going out with expensive brand bags that she must have bought. Nicholas spends all of his pension on golf. He's bought new clubs and has a golf bag right by the front door. I'm paying for everything, including the rent and all of their living expenses, and yet these people still act this way, even though I question their behavior. My in-laws had nowhere else to go, so I just put up with them for now. About a month after Eric stopped having breakfast with me, he started going on more business trips. He told me he was starting a new department at his company and was planning to import LEDs from Korea, so he had to travel there more often. One weekend, Eric was supposed to be in Korea on a business trip, but when I went out for dinner with my friend Lily at a fancy Italian restaurant, I saw Eric there with another woman. Lily pointed him out, saying, "Hey, Amy, isn't that your husband?" At first, I tried to convince myself it wasn't him, but it clearly was. Every time Eric said he was going to Korea, it meant he was spending the weekend with another woman. The woman with him was young, probably in her early 20s, much younger than Eric, who's 37. I remembered Eric asking me once, "Don't you want me to be attracted to you?" That made it clear to me, my husband was definitely cheating on me. The next day, I hired a private investigator to look into the affair. Lately, I had also been getting packages addressed to Julia at our house. "Julia, did you buy something again?" "Be quiet, Amy. Do I need your permission to buy anything?" "No, that's not what I mean." Julia had recently become obsessed with online shopping, buying expensive brand bags and jewelry. I was worried because there are many fake items sold online, and I didn't want her to get scammed. And I was right. One day, when Eric was at work, Julia came into my office and said, "Hey, Amy, come take a look at something." I followed her to the living room, where she was opening a package that had just arrived. "I bought 5 bags, they were cheap as a bundle," Julia explained. When I looked at the bags, I could tell they were fake. "Julia, you have to be careful when buying online, especially with high-end brands. There's a good chance they could be fake." I was shocked to see how much she'd paid for them. "What should I do with these 5 bags?" she asked. "I think you should contact the seller and see if they have a return policy." She tried to reach out to the seller, but there was no phone number or working contact details. When she finally found a number, it was out of service. Julia had spent $5,000 on 5 fake bags. The website seemed legitimate at first, but the prices were too low to be true. She paid by bank transfer, and there was no way to reverse the payment through her credit card. "Julia, you really have to be careful. If the price is too good to be true, it probably is. You need to think carefully before buying anything, especially online." Don't act like I don't know what I'm talking about, Amy. It's not that. You just wasted money. Paying $5,000 for fake bags is ridiculous. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Since talking didn't help, I went back to my room to work. Then, after dinner on Sunday, Nicholas suddenly told me to stop doing FX trading. He had gone golfing with a friend from his old job and heard about FX trading. He said, "I heard Forex trading is a scam." "Amy, are you making money by scamming people?" "What? How do you make money with FX trading?" "That sounds like what scammers do. I heard it's all a scam." "No, I'm not scamming anyone or making anyone invest in anything. I saw you using social media. That's what scammers use to trick people." "No, I just write a blog for people who are interested in FX trading. There's nothing scammy about it." "You think you can fool me just because I don't know anything about computers?" "No, I'm not fooling or scamming you. Dad thinks you're scamming because it looks too easy for you to make money, Amy. It's not easy money, Eric. I've told you this before. It's not that simple. You just learned a little and now you're making a lot. It must be easy. Meanwhile, I'm busting my ass at work, starting this new department." "What? Eric, I thought you were supporting me in my FX trading. Do you want me to stop doing FX trading? If I do that, how will we pay for everything? We won't even be able to afford the rent." "I can pay the rent myself, since I'm the full-time FX trader." Eric and his family were living off the lifestyle I paid for, yet they didn't seem grateful. They only complained about my FX trading. The next day, I got the results from the private investigator I had hired. It turned out Eric was cheating on me. He was having an affair with a 25-year-old woman, 12 years younger than him. I didn't know her, but she worked with Eric at the company after I left. She'd gone on several business trips with him to Korea. For a few days, I thought about how to tell Eric. This would mean the end of our marriage, and a divorce. That same day, Emmanuela made dinner for us. Just as she was leaving, Julia spoke up. Amy, I talked to Nicholas and Eric, and we don't like anything about you. We've decided to live on our own. I want you to leave. Eric hadn't come home from work yet. We don't want money that comes from your scams. We don't like how you act like you know everything. We've discussed it with Eric, and we've decided you should leave. I had a feeling this was coming. Fine then. Eric wasn't even home, which made it clear he didn't care about me anymore. I realized I didn't need to take care of their lives anymore, so I packed my bags and moved to a hotel. The divorce happened soon after that. Since I'd discovered Eric's affair during our marriage, I was able to file for alimony. I rented a one-bedroom apartment just for myself and moved in. I changed the lease on the old apartment where I lived with Eric to his name. 4 months later, I got a call from Eric. He said he wanted to talk and would come to my new apartment. I had a bad feeling when Eric showed up with Nicholas and Julia. Amy, we're sorry. We apologize for everything. Please come back and live with us, Eric said, sounding regretful. Nicholas and Julia quickly joined in, apologizing too. What is this? I asked, confused. Eric, looking down, explained that they couldn't afford the rent anymore. We're about to be evicted and have nowhere to go. Amy, please help us. What are you talking about? Eric went on to explain that after I left, his new department failed. The LEDs they imported were defective, with faulty sockets and bulbs about to fall off. They had to recall the entire shipment, which caused major problems. Eric was fired from his job. Trying to make money on his own, Eric invested in forex trading using his small savings, but lost it all by making bad trades. Nicholas tried to use his own savings to invest in stocks, but that didn't work either. They had no money for rent, and no way to move out. Eric begged, please help us, Amy. I was stunned. We're divorced. Eric. I know, but please, help us. What happened to your young girlfriend? When I lost my job, I couldn't get in touch with her anymore. Yeah, why would she stay with someone who got fired? Eric continued to beg, Amy, you're all I have left. Please, let's get remarried. Let's start over. Nicholas and Julia also joined in, apologizing for their behavior, admitting they were wrong, and asking for another chance. Please, Amy, they said, let's be a family again. I was firm. No way in hell I'm doing that. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. They continued to argue, but when I threatened the police, they finally left. After that, Eric called me twice more, asking me to get back together, but I refused both times. I didn't care what happened to him or his parents anymore. Spending so much time alone, working as a trader, I realized it was time to start dating again. I talked to Lily, and she said she'd introduce me to someone. Tomorrow, I'm meeting her and her friend. I'm looking forward to it and to starting a new chapter in my life.
They didn't even wait for the lawyer to speak. She's getting nothing. Dad hated her. That's the first thing my sister Rachel said the moment I walked into the room. No hello. No looking at me. Just those cold, sharp words, loud enough for everyone to hear. Like she wanted them to echo. It felt like a punch to my chest. I held my son Peter's hand tighter. His small fingers held mine back, warm and shaking. I looked down and tried to smile at him. It was a thin, weak smile, but he knew. He always did. I hadn't even sat down yet, but the message was clear. I wasn't welcome. I wasn't one of them. I was just someone they were ready to push out for good. Rachel sat at the head of the table, calm and proud in a gray pantsuit. Her dark hair was pulled tight in a bun, the kind she wore when she wanted to look powerful. Her lipstick was bold red, typical Rachel. Dressed for a fight I didn't even know I'd walked into. Then I heard a voice I hated even more, my Uncle Logan. My dad's older brother. He laughed, dry and mean, leaning back in his chair with his hands behind his head. That smug smile spread across his face like spilled oil. Even her kid knows she's useless, he muttered, nodding at Peter like he wasn't even a real person. Peter stared at the floor, and my heart broke a little more. Around the room, some people nodded. My cousins, old neighbors, family friends I hadn't seen in years. People who had already chosen a side, and it wasn't mine. I swallowed hard. My throat was dry like sandpaper. The room smelled like dust, old leather chairs, and the sickeningly sweet perfume Rachel had drenched herself in. My ears pounded with my own heartbeat, hot and loud and full of shame. I took Peter's hand and quietly walked to the farthest chair at the end of the long table. It was far away from all of them. The chair creaked as I sat down. When I sat down, Peter climbed up next to me. His legs swung above the floor, and he folded his hands in his lap like he wanted to disappear. Rachel slowly turned her head toward me. When our eyes met, she smiled, but it wasn't kind. It was the kind of smile full of fake pity and hidden hate. "You know this is a waste of time, right?" she said in a calm but cold voice. "Dad changed his will. You're not in it at all. He said you were dead to him." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My mouth felt heavy, like my tongue didn't know what to do. I just gave a small nod, pretending I understood. But inside, I was asking myself, why did I even come here? I thought maybe, just maybe, there would be something. A note. A line. A sign that he remembered me. Something to make it all make sense. Instead, I was back in the place I swore I'd never return to. Surrounded by people who had erased me from their lives long before they ever buried him. I was about to stand up and leave, to walk out before they started dividing the estate like vultures circling a body, when the door creaked open. Mr. Richard, my father's lawyer, walked in holding a thick folder. He looked exactly the same. Neat suit, tired eyes, and a face that showed no emotion. The room went silent. Everyone sat up straight. This was it. I braced myself for the moment I'd be pushed aside again. I came here expecting nothing, and I was ready to leave with just that, nothing. Or so I thought. Because what no one in that room knew, not Rachel, not Logan, not even me, was that my son Peter had brought something with him. And with one sentence, he would change everything they thought they knew. "You forgot the video," he said. He was talking about the recording. It had been 9 years since I sat in a room like this with my family. 9 years since I packed up everything they said I didn't deserve, took little Peter, only 3 years old at the time, and left without turning back. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. I had to leave because every talk with my father, Jeremy, ended in either silence or yelling. Every family gathering felt like walking on broken glass while pretending everything was fine. But now, here I was back in a room that still smelled like cigar smoke and old anger. The strange part? I didn't even know I was invited to the will reading. The envelope came 4 days after the funeral. No message, no explanation, just a date, time, and address written in Mr. Richard's neat handwriting. For a second, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they meant to send it to Eric. Or maybe it was just one last cruel joke. But Peter wanted to go. He looked up at me with those gentle, honest eyes and said softly, "We should go, Mom. Maybe there's something you need to hear." I don't know how a 11-year-old can be so wise, but Peter is. Sometimes I think he understands things most adults never do. So, we went. I wore the plain black dress I hadn't touched since my mom's funeral. Peter wore a little button-up shirt he chose himself. That morning, I braided his hair with shaky hands, and he looked up at me and said, "You look beautiful." He didn't know I hadn't slept, or how scared I was to face the people who treated me like I didn't exist for almost 11 years. I knew what they thought of me. Rachel, the perfect daughter. She stayed. She helped. She took care of Dad. And she made sure everyone saw it. She told the story so many times, people believed it without question. Anna? Anna left. Anna couldn't handle life. Anna ran away. They never asked why I really left. They didn't know, or didn't care, that Dad stopped talking to me when I said I couldn't stay in a marriage that was breaking me. That when I showed up at his doorstep with little Peter and a suitcase, he closed the door in my face. The one person who was supposed to protect me became another wall I had to climb. Uncle Logan never helped. He just echoed Dad's harsh words. Family doesn't quit. Blood is loyalty. Don't come back crying. And Rachel? She absorbed all of it and turned it into a story she could use against me. So, I stopped trying. I built a quiet life for Peter and me. We didn't have a lot, but we had peace, love, and laughter. Still, deep down, a small part of me held on to a tiny hope that maybe, just maybe, Dad had changed his mind. Maybe he felt sorry. Maybe he left something behind for me. That little hope is what made me open the envelope. It's what made me come here. But now, sitting in this room, surrounded by cold stares and proud, smug smiles, I felt silly for ever hoping. Peter hadn't said a word since we sat down. He sat straight, hands in his lap, eyes moving slowly across the room like he was watching every person closely. His calmness made me nervous, like he was waiting for something big to happen. Then Mr. Richard cleared his throat and opened the folder in his hands. I leaned back in my chair and quietly whispered to myself, "Just get through this. Don't let them see you break." But Peter, he was holding on to something bigger than sadness. And before this day ended, he would show everyone that he was the only one who had truly listened to my father. Mr. Richard cleared his throat again in that lawyer way, trying to get everyone's attention without really saying anything. He adjusted his glasses, opened the folder, and started reading the will like it was just another normal day. I didn't hear much of the beginning, just legal terms, formal phrases, and estate stuff. My mind was spinning, not because of what he was saying, but because of what I knew was coming. He wasn't going to say my name. I was sure of it. Still, every time Mr. Richard paused to turn the page, I held my breath. Maybe the next part will be different, I told myself. Maybe there will be a surprise. But it wasn't. It was the same as I expected. To my daughter Rachel, I leave the main house and everything in it. Rachel's face stayed still, but I could feel her pride filling the room. She glanced at her husband, James, and he gave her a small, proud nod, like they were already planning what to change in the house. To my brother Logan, the lake house, and the rest of the shares in the family business. Logan leaned back even more in his chair, folding his arms and raising his chin like he was the king of something. He slid a cigar back between his teeth and gently bit down like he had just won a prize. To Gary, my nephew, the vintage car collection.
Gary.
The same cousin who once locked me out of my own room when I was 9 just to watch me cry. That Gary. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop myself from reacting. I could feel the tears forming, hot and sharp, but I didn't let them fall. Still nothing about me. Not even a small mention. Then came the line I was most afraid of. And as previously stated, my daughter Anna will not receive any portion of this estate. There it was. Simple. Final. Like someone closing a door right in your face. It felt like someone had hit me in the chest. I didn't even realize my hands were clenched in my lap until Peter gently slipped his fingers into mine under the table. His touch brought me back, kept me from falling apart. My heart was beating so fast, I could feel it in my face. My skin felt hot. Then came the whispers. Quiet, but on purpose. Rachel let out a soft laugh. "Told you," she muttered to James. Uncle Logan shook his head like he expected this to happen. "Takes a certain kind of person to walk away from her own father," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The others, my cousins, the family friends, didn't say anything. But their silence said everything. I stared down at the table. The wood grain twisted in loops and swirls, almost like a maze. It was easier to look at that than at their faces. Inside my head, my own voice asked, why did I come? Why did I think he'd remember me? Then Peter moved. He let go of my hand and sat up straight. I felt the shift before I saw it. His voice broke the silence in the room. Soft but firm. "You forgot the video," he recorded. The room froze. Rachel blinked. Logan turned. Mr. Richard stopped, his pen still in the air. I looked at Peter, confused. "What video?" I whispered. But Peter wasn't looking at me. He was staring straight ahead, calm and sure. Then, he reached into his backpack and pulled out a small white envelope. It was a little wrinkled, but sealed tight. My name was on the front, and below that, in my father's handwriting, were the words, "For the lawyer. Only if it gets ugly." I didn't understand, but Peter did. And in that moment, I felt the entire mood in the room shift. I stared at the envelope in Peter's hands like it was glowing. He held it so steadily, like it wasn't the most powerful thing in the room. But all I could see was that handwriting, bold, sharp, all in capital letters. My father's writing. For the lawyer. Only if it gets ugly. And it had definitely gotten ugly. I could barely speak. Peter, where did you get that? He looked at me with soft, steady eyes. Grandpa gave it to me a while ago. He told me to keep it safe. My heart skipped a beat. He gave it to you? Peter nodded. The day we visited him. Just me and him. You were at work. I blinked, trying to remember. Then it hit me, I did remember that day. Peter had asked to go with our neighbor to drop something off at Grandpa's. I had said yes. It was the first time I let him go without me. I had no idea they even talked. Now, Mr. Richard reached across the table and asked gently, "May I?" Peter nodded and handed him the envelope without hesitation. Everyone leaned in. Rachel squinted like she was confused. Logan sat up straight, no longer leaning back. For the first time, no one had anything to say. The room was quiet as Mr. Richard carefully tore open the envelope. Inside was a small black USB drive, nothing special, but my heart started racing like it was something dangerous. He also pulled out a note, another page in my father's handwriting. Mr. Richard read it silently, and for the first time since he entered the room, he looked a little shaken. Just for a moment, but I noticed. He didn't speak right away. He just gave a slow nod, like something serious had been confirmed. Then he looked at the room and said in a soft voice, "There's a video message from Jeremy Scott, recorded before the final version of this will. It came with instructions to play it only if things got difficult." His eyes went to Rachel, then to Logan. They both shifted in their seats. Rachel scoffed, "This is ridiculous. He never said anything about a video." Logan leaned forward, his voice sharp. "We don't even know what's on that thing. Could be fake." Mr. Richard raised his hand calmly. "The video has a timestamp. The handwriting and signature are real. And I am legally required to play it." He plugged the USB into a black laptop on the desk next to him. The screen turned on, then showed one word: play. The air in the room felt different now. No one spoke. No one moved. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingers. I held onto the chair's arms like I was afraid I might float away. My breathing was shaky. Why would Dad leave a video? Why give it to Peter? What could he possibly have to say now, after everything? Peter didn't seem worried. He sat still, eyes on the screen like he already knew what was coming. Rachel looked pale now, her lips tight. Logan wasn't chewing his cigar anymore. I felt like running, or crying, or yelling. But most of all, I needed to know. Mr. Richard pressed the spacebar. The screen went black for a second. Then it flickered, and there he was. My father. He looked older. Thinner. He was sitting at his desk, wearing that navy sweater I had bought him for his last birthday. The one I didn't even know he had ever worn. His hands were folded. His face wasn't cold. It just looked tired. He looked straight into the camera. Then he began to speak. I didn't even breathe. Not when the screen lit up. Not when I saw his face. When I heard the first two words, "Hi, Anna," my heart nearly stopped. He looked older than I remembered. His skin was thinner, and he didn't sit as tall as he used to. But it was still my dad, Jeremy Scott, sitting at his old wooden desk with the antique globe behind him, just like when we were kids. Only this time, he didn't look strict or cold. He looked human. "If you're watching this," he said, "I'm gone. And I'm guessing the will reading didn't go well." His hands were folded in front of him. I noticed his fingers twitching slightly, something he used to do when he was nervous. "I do the same thing. I didn't expect peace between you and the family," he continued. "I know what they think of you. And I know what I said about you too." He paused, looked down, and took a breath. I was wrong. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My fingers gripped the chair. Peter looked up at me, but I couldn't look away from the screen. I believed what Rachel told me. I believed Logan. I believed that you left because you didn't care. I never asked questions. I didn't listen. Not once. You tried to explain, and I shut the door in your face, on you and Peter. I heard Rachel shift in her chair beside me, clearly uncomfortable. But I didn't look at her. I couldn't. Dad's voice cracked slightly. I thought being strong meant being proud. That if you left, it was betrayal. But now I understand. Real strength is showing up. It's protecting your child. And you did that. You did what I couldn't. His eyes were wet. So were mine. I met Peter once when he came by to see me. Just the two of us. He didn't say much, but when I asked him about you, he said, "My mom is the safest place in the world." I covered my mouth with my hand, trying not to cry. "I lost you, Anna," Dad said, voice soft. "I see that now. I lost my daughter because I was too busy trying to be right instead of just loving you the way you needed." He took a deep breath, then looked straight into the camera.
Calm. Certain.
"But I won't let the last thing I do be pushing you away again." He cleared his throat. "So, I changed the will." There was a loud gasp in the room. A chair creaked, probably Logan's. Rachel muttered something under her breath, but I couldn't hear it. I could barely hear anything except Dad's voice. "I've left the house to you and Peter. The savings. The retirement account. It's all yours. And a college fund for Peter, too." He paused, eyes full of emotion. "I know this doesn't undo the pain I caused. But I want you to have the peace I couldn't give you. When I was alive," my father said, then paused. He leaned a little closer to the camera. "And if they're angry, let them be angry. You deserve this. You lived through everything and never stopped being a mother. That's more than I ever managed." A heavy feeling rose in my throat. I could barely breathe. "I'm proud of you, and I love you, Anna. I always did, I just didn't know how to show it." Then, just before the screen faded to black, he said softly, "Take care of my grandson. Tell him thank you." The screen went dark. No music, no ending message. Just silence. Deep, pure silence. Around me, chairs creaked. Someone sniffled. But I didn't move. I sat there with my hand over my mouth, tears falling down my cheeks. It felt like a weight I didn't even know I had been carrying was suddenly gone. After years of blame, silence, and being pushed away, he finally heard me. And in that moment of quiet, no one could take it from me. No one said a word when the screen turned off. Not Rachel. Not Logan. Not the cousins or the family friends who once smiled at me while ignoring my pain. Even Mr. Richard stayed still, his hand frozen above the mouse like stopping the video had paused time itself. And maybe, in a way, it had. I don't know how long I sat there. My hand was still covering my mouth, my cheeks still wet. I hadn't even noticed the tears until I felt Peter's hand slip into mine again. He wasn't crying. He just looked up at me with a small, knowing smile, like he'd been waiting for this moment, waiting for the truth to finally be spoken. I leaned down and kissed the top of his head. My heart ached with something too big to explain: love, relief, grief, all mixed together. Across the room, Rachel stood up quickly. Her chair screeched as it moved. She grabbed her bag with shaky hands and walked out without saying a word. Her husband followed behind, red in the face, mumbling something under his breath. Logan stayed sitting longer. His jaw was tight, and he stared at nothing. When he finally got up, he looked at Mr. Richard like he wanted to argue, but even he knew there was nothing left to say. My father had spoken. His words couldn't be ignored. The rest followed one by one. Some didn't look at me. A few gave small nods, maybe pity, maybe respect. I couldn't tell. Soon, it was just the three of us left. Mr. Richard gently closed the folder and cleared his throat. "There'll be some paperwork," he said, his voice softer than before. "But everything's in order." I nodded. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? He gave me a small, kind smile, then left the room quietly. The silence that followed wasn't the heavy kind anymore. It was peaceful. I had gotten used to silence, but this silence felt different. It felt peaceful, complete, like something inside me had finally settled. I looked at Peter, still holding my hand, still watching me like I was the strongest person in the world. Maybe to him I was. But the truth is, he was the one who saved me. He carried that envelope like it was nothing, just a piece of paper. But it held the truth that changed everything. We stayed a little longer. I don't know why. Maybe I just needed a moment to breathe. Maybe I wanted to sit in the only room where, after so many years, I finally felt like I belonged. I kept hearing my dad's voice in my head. "I'm proud of you." 3 simple words I never thought I'd hear. Words I didn't even know I needed so much. I thought about all the years I spent feeling ignored, blamed, and forgotten. But now, I wasn't forgotten. I was seen. I was heard. I mattered. I looked at Peter again. "Thank you," I whispered. He tilted his head. "For what?" "For being braver than me," I said. "For holding on to something that mattered." He smiled. "I just wanted you to hear him." And I did. Not just in the video, but in the quiet that came afterward. In the peace that filled the room once everyone else had gone. That's the thing about the truth. It doesn't always come when you want it. But when it does, it changes everything. So no, I didn't walk out of that room broken. I walked out holding my son's hand, my father's words still echoing in my heart. I walked out whole. And that silence? It finally meant something. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been pushed aside, judged unfairly, or made to feel like your voice didn't count, just remember this. You are not invisible. The truth may take time, but it always finds its way out. If this touched your heart, please like the video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Stories like this reach those who need them most when you help them travel. And if you want more honest, emotional stories just like this one, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
There's so much more to share.
Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and always remember, your voice matters. What would you do if your parents left you for 11 years and then suddenly showed up at a funeral just to claim $80 million? I still remember that night like it just happened. It was the night my whole world changed. I was only 9 years old, sitting in the back seat of an old car, holding my favorite teddy bear close to my chest. I never went anywhere without it. The sky was dark, but it felt calm. The streetlights gave off a soft orange glow. I wasn't scared because we were going to Grandma Brenda's house, and being there always made me feel better. Grandma would welcome me with a big smile. Her cookies smelled amazing. Her hugs were warm. She told me magical stories and let me look through her special old books, books that only I was allowed to touch. But that night felt strange. The car stopped in front of her house. I heard the gravel under the tires. I waited for my mom to look back at me, but she didn't. She just sat there, gripping the steering wheel like she was afraid to let go. Her face wasn't angry or sad, it was just blank. I didn't understand what it meant. My dad didn't say a word. He just stared ahead. Maybe it hurt him to look at me. Finally, my mom turned around. She spoke so quietly, I almost didn't hear her. "We just need a little time to figure things out, Christina. Be a good girl and stay with Grandma for now, okay?" That was all she said. No hugs. No kisses. No promises. I nodded like a good girl. I didn't think anything was wrong. I thought they'd come back the next day or the day after that. I got out of the car with my small backpack. It only had a few clothes inside. Grandma Brenda was already at the door, waiting. Her eyes looked sad, but she still smiled at me. I turned around and called out, "Mom?" But the car had already started to drive away. No wave. No goodbye. I ran a few steps after the car, my chest tight, watching the red taillights disappear down the road. I didn't cry, not because I was strong, but because I didn't understand yet that they had left me. Grandma hugged me tight and rubbed my back, just like she always did when she wanted me to feel better. She didn't say anything. She just led me inside, where the smell of chamomile tea filled the house. She made my favorite chicken noodle soup, but I couldn't eat any of it. That night, she read me the same bedtime story I always loved, the one I asked for all the time. Her voice was calm and gentle, but when the lights went out, I couldn't focus on the words. I curled up in bed, holding my teddy bear close, listening carefully for the sound of a car. But all I heard was the wind outside. The next day, I sat by the window, staring at the road. I stayed there all day, waiting. Nobody came. A week went by. Every afternoon, I sat there, watching every car that passed. Every engine sound made my heart jump. But then it would sink again when it wasn't them. 3 months later, and still, my parents didn't come back. At school, when other kids talked about their families, I just smiled and stayed quiet. I stopped asking Grandma Brenda when they were coming, because deep down I already knew they weren't. My head understood it, but my heart didn't. At night, when the house was quiet, I would hide under the covers, trying not to let my soft crying be heard. I didn't want Grandma to worry. Still, some nights she would come into my room quietly and sit at the end of my bed, gently rubbing my back with her wrinkled hand. "It's not your fault, Emma," she would whisper. "Some people just aren't ready to be parents. But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But that question kept coming back again and again in my mind. Why didn't they choose me? Grandma Brenda wasn't the kind of person who showed big emotions. She didn't say, "I love you" all the time, but she showed it in small, quiet ways. Through her kindness, through warm meals ready on the table, through lessons she taught me without even saying much, and most of all, through the silence she kept about the ones who left. Her house wasn't fancy. It didn't look like the big shiny homes in magazines, but it always felt safe. She drove an old Toyota that rattled a bit, but she never cared about getting a new one. Her shelves were full of books that reached the ceiling, stories and biographies she loved. Every morning, she read the financial news in the paper, sometimes nodding, sometimes frowning in thought. I didn't understand the numbers she looked at, but every time she looked up and saw me, there was pride in her eyes. "Why do you read that stuff?" I asked Grandma one quiet morning while I stirred my cereal. She put down her cup of tea and gave a small smile. "Because knowledge is power, Emma. And when you learn how to handle money, you won't have to depend on anyone else." I just nodded. I didn't fully understand it back then, but those words would stick with me forever. Living with Grandma Brenda, I slowly got used to my new life. I stopped watching out the window, waiting for a car that would never come. She taught me how to bake cookies, take care of the little flower garden in the backyard, and how to think clearly instead of letting my feelings control me. Most of all, she made sure I always felt loved. She was the first to notice how much I loved science. One afternoon, when I was 9, she found me in the kitchen, completely focused. I had mixed baking soda and vinegar and was watching with wide eyes as bubbles spilled over the cup. She folded her arms and smiled. "Well, looks like we've got a scientist in the house." I looked up, feeling a little shy. "I was just trying something," I said. She nodded. "Trying things is how you learn, Emma. But if you want to do more, let's do it the right way." The next day, she took me to a bookstore that sold science books for kids and told me to choose whatever I liked. I picked a book about chemical reactions and a small experiment kit. She never said no. Even when I asked for more books later, she always supported me. She made me believe nothing was out of reach. By the time I was 14, I was working on a project to study how bacteria reacted to different things. I spent hours reading, testing, and writing notes. When the state science fair came, I was scared to go. I thought I'd fail, but Grandma wouldn't let me give up. "Emma," she said, "being successful doesn't mean never failing. It means you keep going, even when it's hard." Her words gave me strength. I didn't just go to the fair, I won first place. When I stepped on the stage to get my trophy, I looked for her in the crowd. She was in the back row, eyes full of pride. In that moment, I knew every late night, every tear, every bit of work was worth it. When other kids talked about their families, I just smiled and stayed quiet. I had stopped asking Grandma when my parents were coming back, because I already knew they weren't. My mind understood that, but my heart still hurt. Most nights, after everything was quiet, I would crawl under my blanket and cry softly so Grandma wouldn't hear. I didn't want her to worry.
I didn't want Grandma to worry about me.
But sometimes, she would quietly come into my room at night. She'd sit at the edge of my bed and gently rub my back in slow circles with her old, soft hand. "It's not your fault, Emma," she would whisper. "Some people just aren't meant to be parents. But that has nothing to do with you." I really wanted to believe her. Did I believe her? I tried. But it was hard, because the truth always came back. And the same question kept echoing in my mind.
Why didn't they want me?
Grandma Brenda wasn't someone who gave big hugs or said a lot of emotional things. But she showed her love in quiet ways. With patience. With warm meals always ready on the table. With small lessons that stayed with me. And by never saying anything bad about the people who left. Her house wasn't fancy. Nothing like the ones I saw in magazines. But it always felt safe. She drove an old Toyota that made noise. But she didn't care about buying a new one. Her bookshelves were tall and full of novels and life stories she loved to read. Every morning, she sat with the newspaper and read the finance section. Sometimes she nodded, sometimes she frowned, thinking hard. I didn't understand any of the numbers. But every time she looked up and met my eyes, I saw pride on her face. One slow morning while I was eating cereal, I asked, "Why do you read that stuff?" She put down her tea and gave me a soft smile. "Because knowledge is power, Emma," she said. "And if you know how to handle money, you'll never have to depend on anyone else."
I just nodded back then.
I didn't know how important her words would become later in my life. Living with Grandma Brenda, I slowly found a new rhythm. I stopped sitting by the window, hoping some car I didn't recognize would pull up. She taught me how to bake cookies, how to take care of the little garden in the backyard, and how to think clearly instead of letting emotions take over. But more than anything, she made sure I never felt alone. She was also the first person to see how much I loved science. One day when I was 9, she walked into the kitchen and saw me totally focused. I had just mixed baking soda and vinegar and was smiling as the bubbles fizzed and spilled out of the cup. She folded her arms and laughed. "Well, looks like we've got a little scientist here." I looked up, face turning red. "I was just playing around," I said. She smiled. "Trying things out is the best way to learn, Emma. But if you're serious, let's do it properly." The next day, she took me to a bookstore that had a kids' science section. She told me to pick anything I liked. I chose a book about simple chemical reactions and a small experiment kit. She never said no. When I asked Grandma for more books, she always said yes. She never made me feel like anything was too hard or too far away. By the time I turned 14, I was working on a science project about how bacteria reacted to different environments. I spent hours reading, testing, and writing everything down. When the state science fair came around, I almost didn't go. I was scared. I wasn't good enough. But Grandma Brenda wouldn't let me give up. "Emma," she said, looking me straight in the eyes, "being successful doesn't mean you never fail. It means you keep going, even when it's hard." Her words gave me strength. I didn't just go to the fair, I won first place. When I stood on stage holding my trophy, I looked for her in the crowd. She was sitting in the back row, her eyes full of pride. In that moment, I knew every hour, every tear, every effort had been worth it. Now, years later, I found myself standing in a quiet hallway at the law office. And there they were, my parents. Part of me wanted to yell, to ask why they left me when I needed them most. Why they were here now after all this time. But I didn't say anything. I just tightened my fists and stayed calm. My dad's voice was fake soft. "This has been really hard. We know you're hurting, sweetheart, but you don't have to do this alone. You're coming home with us." "Home?" I repeated the word sharply. My mom nodded and reached out to touch my hand, but I stepped back. "You're still under 19, she said. "You're still our daughter. Now that Brenda is gone, you need your family." "Family?" I said with a bitter laugh. The quiet around the staircase felt heavy, but I didn't care. I looked right at them. They were trying to act calm, but I wasn't that confused 9-year-old anymore. I knew why they had come back.
It wasn't for me.
It was for Grandma's money. I stared at my dad. "Are you here for me, or for Grandma's money?" Silence. My mom blinked, and for a second, I saw the truth in her eyes. But she quickly covered it up. My dad leaned closer, his voice firm. "Of course we're here for you, Emma. We're your family." "Do you really believe that?" I asked. A real family doesn't leave their kid without a word. A real family doesn't show up only when there's something to take. I took a deep breath. It was the calmest I had felt in years. I'm not going anywhere, I said. My mom's face changed. Her smile faded. Emma, don't be difficult. We're your parents, she said. I looked straight at them. The only real family I had is gone. Saying those words made my throat hurt, but I didn't cry, because in that moment I finally knew. I didn't expect anything from them anymore. They had walked away once. I would never let them walk back into my life just to hurt me again. The air in the law office's conference room felt heavy, but inside me, everything finally felt clear. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. Every second felt longer than the last. I sat at the head of the table, my hands tightly folded in my lap. Across from me, a man in a neat gray suit carefully organized a stack of papers. He was Brenda's lawyer. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me felt nothing. Another part felt nervous. But mostly, I just wanted it all to be over, so I could leave. My parents sat across from me too. Their faces looked calm, but I could tell it was fake. I saw that look in their eyes. They weren't here for me. They were waiting to see what Brenda had left behind. The lawyer cleared his throat, turned a page, and looked at me. Emma, I'm Henry Ashton, your grandmother's lawyer. I'll now read her will. I nodded, trying not to show any emotion. He picked up the paper and began. Brenda Mackey Montgomery, being of sound mind and acting by my own choice, declare this as my final will. My chest felt tight as his voice filled the room. He first talked about small gifts Brenda had planned for close friends. Then he slowed down when he got to the big part. All properties, investments, bank accounts, and personal belongings, with a total value of about $80 million, will go completely to my granddaughter, Emma Mackey Montgomery. Silence. The room went still. My parents froze. My mom jumped from her chair, shocked. That can't be right. There must be some mistake. My dad narrowed his eyes. His voice turned cold. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Her children should get the money. But the lawyer, Mr. Ashton, stayed calm.
He slid a folder toward them.
I'm sorry, he said. Neither of you has any legal right to Brenda's estate. He pointed to a document on top. 11 years ago, you both signed this. You gave up all guardianship rights over Emma. Do you remember? My mom's face went pale. That was just paperwork. We didn't mean it, she said. The lawyer shook his head. This is a legal contract. When you signed it, you gave up all rights to Emma, including any claim to what she might inherit. I looked at them, hoping for some sign that they were sorry, that they finally understood what they had done. But all I saw was panic and anger as their plans started to fall apart. My dad clenched his jaw. She must have been fooled. There's no way she would give everything to a kid like her. Mr. Ashton stayed calm. Brenda was smart and very careful, he said. Before she died, several lawyers and witnesses confirmed this will. No one fooled her. My mom's hands turned into fists. Her voice shook. We're her family. We should get something. No, I said, my voice steady and firm. They stared at me, shocked and angry. But I didn't look away. I held their eyes, speaking clearly and calmly. Family is supposed to be the people who stay with you when it really matters. The ones who love you no matter what. The ones who raise you, help you, and hold you when you're sad. I took a deep breath and held the small key hanging from my necklace. Grandma Brenda's last gift to me. You left me a long time ago, I said quietly. And now I'm leaving you. My mom's eyes were full of anger. Emma, you don't understand, she snapped. If you don't share the money with us, there will be consequences. I let out a cold, dry laugh. Consequences? You think I'm scared of you. You actually taught me something important. I don't need people who only care about what I can give them. My dad slammed his hand on the table. You'll regret this. Before I could speak, Mr. Frank, the lawyer, stepped in. You're free to challenge the will if you want, he said calmly. But I'll tell you now, it's solid. There's nothing you can change or use against Emma. Their faces dropped. They knew it was over. Finally, my mom stood up, her face cold and hard. Mark my words, Emma, she said. You might have the money, but you'll never have a real family. I looked at her. Something moved inside me. But it wasn't fear, and it wasn't sadness. It was freedom. I stood tall, touched the necklace around my neck, and spoke clearly. I did have a real family, I said. You just weren't part of it. Then I turned around and walked away. I didn't look back, because I knew I'd never have to see them again. I thought everything would end after the will was read, but I didn't expect how greedy they would be. A few weeks later, Mr. Henry Ashton, the lawyer, called me. He said my parents had filed a lawsuit to fight the inheritance. They claimed Brenda was forced to change her will, said she wasn't mentally okay near the end, and argued that I was too young to handle so much money.
I wasn't surprised.
I knew they wouldn't give up that easily. But I also knew Brenda had thought ahead. We had all the documents, even medical records showing she was mentally healthy when she signed the will. Everything was legal and already in my name. There was nothing they could twist or fake. The judge rejected the case almost right away. I thought that would finally be the end of it. But I was wrong. That afternoon, I was working at First Metropolitan Financial Services, the company Grandma Brenda had started from scratch. The receptionist called over the intercom. Miss Emma, 3 people downstairs say they're your parents. They're demanding to speak with you right now. I let out a deep sigh, dropped my pen, and leaned back in my chair. This back and forth had worn me out. I'll come down, I said. When the elevator doors opened, I stood up straighter. I wasn't that little 9-year-old girl anymore, the one who cried when they left. And there they were, standing in the middle of the marble lobby, drawing stares from everyone around. My mom stood there with her arms crossed, clearly annoyed. My dad stood next to her, stiff and tense. As soon as they saw me, they walked straight toward me. Emma, my mom said, her voice full of fake concern. We need to talk. I didn't move. I just crossed my arms. Talk about what exactly? My dad jumped in, his voice firmer. We can't leave things like this. You know that. I gave a short, cold laugh. Like what? Like how you both left me 11 years ago and never looked back. My mom's jaw tightened. Watch your tone, Emma, she snapped. I know you're upset, but this isn't just about the past. This is about family and what's rightfully ours. I raised an eyebrow. Ours? What makes you think you deserve anything? My voice didn't shake. You didn't come back to fix anything. You came back for the money. My mom blinked but didn't deny it. My dad leaned in a little, lowering his voice in a way that felt like a warning. If you won't cooperate, we'll try something else. I tilted my head. Something else? Like what? He clenched his fists. We could go public. The media would love a story about a teenager stealing her parents' inheritance. I laughed sharply. Is that a threat? Go ahead. Tell your version of the story. Then I stepped closer, my voice low but sharp. Tell them how you left your daughter at 9 years old without even saying goodbye. They both flinched. I wasn't done. Tell them how you tried to cheat your own mother out of everything she worked so hard for. My mom glared, but I kept going. Tell them how in 11 whole years, not once did you check to see if I was okay, or even alive. And then, after Grandma Brenda died, you showed up again, just for her money. They didn't say a word, but I saw the fear on their faces. Not fear of me, but fear that the truth might finally come out. Because once it did, they couldn't hide from it. My dad looked away first, jaw tight, mumbling something I couldn't hear. My mom paused, maybe thinking I'd changed my mind. But I didn't move. I didn't back down. She finally spoke, her voice lower now. Remember this, Emma. You may have the money, but you'll never have a real family. I didn't flinch. I looked straight at her, steady and calm. I already had a real family, and it was never you. She pressed her lips together, turned around, and followed my dad out. I stood there, watching them walk out of the building for the last time. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel sorry. Not even a little. For 11 years, I had wished for a real family. But now I understood something important. I hadn't lost a family. I had Brenda. And that was always enough. I found myself sitting in Brenda's office. A room I hadn't gone into since she passed away. Sunlight came through the windows, covering the desk in a warm golden light. Everything looked just like it had before. The neatly stacked books, the small porcelain teacups on the shelf, and her photo on the wall. Her kind but strong eyes seemed to still be watching me. In front of me sat a small wooden box with a sealed envelope on top. My hands shook as I opened it. To my dearest granddaughter, Emma. Reading her words felt like she was right there in the room with me. If you're reading this, then I'm no longer with you. That hurts me, because I never wanted you to feel alone. But remember, even though I'm not in this world anymore, I'll always be watching over you every step of the way. Her handwriting was a little shaky, but still beautiful. I ran my fingers over the words like I could feel her through the ink. You've always wondered why your parents left you. And I know that question has caused you a lot of pain. The truth is, they didn't just leave. They tried to take everything I had. When they saw they couldn't fool me, they chose to walk away. But I never once regretted keeping you. You were the best gift they ever left behind. I held the letter close, my chest feeling tight. Emma, I'm not only leaving you money. I'm leaving you something more important, a purpose. I spent years building the Hope Foundation, a charity to help children who've been abandoned, just like you once were. I used what I had to give others a chance, a voice, a safe place. I blinked as tears filled my eyes. I know you are strong. You're smart, kind, and full of heart. Don't let the past stop you. Use what I've left you to help others, however you choose to do it. At the bottom of the letter was one final line. I have always believed in you, and I will love you forever. Quiet tears ran down my cheeks as I held the letter close. In the weeks that followed, I started learning everything I could about the Hope Foundation. The office was in a small building Brenda had bought years ago. That's where I met her team. People who truly cared about helping kids who had no one. One of them, Nicole, a kind woman with gray in her hair, came up to me and gently held my hand. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "Brenda always told us that one day you'd come." She smiled, and it was warm and real. "She always believed you were the only one who could continue her dream," Nicole said. I looked around the room. The walls were filled with pictures of smiling children, files showing how their lives had changed, and letters written by people who once felt lost but now had hope. I let out a slow breath. I don't know if I'm ready for this. Nicole gently shook her head. "You're here. That already means something." And in that moment I knew I was going to make it work. While I helped with the Hope Foundation, I also stepped into Montgomery Investments, the company Brenda had spent years building. At first, the board didn't take me seriously. To them, I was just a young woman with no experience in business or finance. But I didn't let that stop me. I worked hard. I studied every night. I showed up to every meeting. I paid close attention to the best people in a room. And I remembered Brenda's words. Knowledge is power. I used that knowledge to earn their respect. 1 year later, I stood in front of the board, sharing a plan to grow the company in a way that also helped people. And something changed. I could see it in their faces. They finally saw me not as a kid who got lucky, but as a leader. Sure, I could have bought anything I wanted, but I kept Brenda's old Toyota. It stayed in the garage, a little dusty, but I could never sell it. It wasn't just a car. It was a reminder of everything she believed in. Keep life simple. Work with purpose. Help others when you can. I wasn't just holding on to her money. I was carrying her values. I'm not just her heir. I'm her legacy. Life doesn't always go the way we hope, but the way we face hard times shows who we really are. Emma was left behind. She was hurt, but she didn't let that break her. Instead of falling apart, she used her pain to build something meaningful. The strongest legacy isn't about how much we have. It's about what we give to others. By continuing Brenda's work, Emma didn't just find her strength. She proved that we are not shaped by what we lose. We're shaped by what we choose to create. What do you think of Emma's journey? Did she do the right thing by standing up to her parents? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more true stories about family, strength, and finding your place in the world. I was always the other daughter, the one who didn't need much attention. My younger sister, Helen, had asthma, so most of the focus was always on her. While she struggled to breathe, I struggled with being invisible in my own home. Every morning was the same. Mom would rush straight to Helen's room to check on her. "Helen, sweetheart, how are you feeling today? Let me check your temperature," she'd say, sounding really worried. "Don't forget your inhaler. Should I call Dr. John?" I'd stand in the hallway, already dressed for school, just watching. No one checked on me. I made my own lunch, usually a sandwich and an apple. Helen, on the other hand, got special meals made with all her favorite foods. Dad was no different. He worked extra hours to pay for Helen's medical care. When he came home, the first thing he'd do was go straight to her room. "How's my little fighter doing?" he'd ask, walking right past me without a glance. This routine went on for years. While Helen went from one doctor to another, I learned how to take care of myself. I did all my schoolwork alone, packed my own bags for field trips, and dealt with all the ups and downs of being a teenager, without help. Mom didn't work. She said she was too busy looking after Helen, like her full-time nurse and spokesperson. By the time I was in my last year of high school, I had top grades and big dreams. I applied for college scholarships without telling my parents. They were too busy taking Helen to another doctor to notice anyway. The day I got my full scholarship letter, I ran home, excited to tell them. I found Mom in the kitchen, making Helen's special allergy-free dinner. "Mom, I got a full scholarship to State University. You and Dad won't have to pay anything," I said with a big smile. She didn't even look up. "That's nice, dear. Can you set the table? Helen needs to eat on time with her new medicines." That moment told me everything. I finally understood I'd never be their main focus, no matter how hard I tried or what I achieved. But instead of letting that break me, I used it to push myself even harder. I didn't need their attention or approval anymore. I had something much better, my freedom. When I left for college, Mom was too busy with Helen's latest health problem to say a proper goodbye. Dad just handed me some gas money and said, "Drive safe." College passed like a dream. I focused on my classes, made real friends for the first time, and graduated with honors. Right after graduation, the marketing team at Reynolds and Company hired me, and suddenly I was earning more money than I had ever seen in my life. During my college years, I hardly heard from my parents. Every now and then, Mom would text asking if I was okay, but it always turned into a long message about Helen's latest health issue. But things changed after I started working. About 7 months into my job, I got a call. "Kelly, honey," Mom said in an unusually sweet voice I'd never heard her use with me. "Your father and I are in a bit of trouble. Helen needs some new treatments, and the medical bills are a lot." I interrupted her. "How much do you need, Mom?" "Oh, just $3,000. We'll pay you back next month." They never did. Not for that loan or the next one or the one after that. But honestly, I didn't mind too much. For the first time, I had something they needed, and somehow that made me feel seen, even if just a little. Then I met Eric. He made me laugh all the time and always looked at the bright side of life. We dated for a year, and then he proposed to me, right in the break room at work, hiding the ring inside a coffee cup. When we told my parents we were getting married, Mom's first response wasn't happiness. Instead, she said, "Oh, but Helen's having some health problems right now. We might not be able to help much." I smiled and said, "We don't need anything." I told her clearly, "We're handling everything ourselves." And we did. Eric and I had a small, beautiful wedding with just our closest friends. We paid for everything on our own. Afterward, we took a simple honeymoon to the beach and came back ready to start our life together. We both worked hard and saved every bit of money we could. In 3 years, we had enough for a down payment on a small apartment. For years later, we had fully paid it off. One evening, while sitting on our balcony watching the sunset, Eric said, "We should have a baby." I looked at him, this amazing man who had given me everything I missed growing up. He gave me real love, support, and a true partner in life. "Yes," I said, "we should." Our daughter Lauren was born on a spring morning, healthy and perfect. Eric was the happiest dad I had ever seen, taking photos of every little thing she did. When Lauren was 3 months old, Eric got a big promotion at work. "Just one business trip," he said, kissing her forehead. "4 days in Milwaukee, then I'll be back." I drove him to the train station that morning. That was the last time I saw him. The call didn't come from Eric. It came from the railway company. There had been an accident. The train had derailed. There were no survivors. The first few weeks after Eric died felt like a fog. I moved through the days like a ghost, feeding Lauren, changing her, trying to keep us both going, even though I felt empty inside. Then the insurance company called about Eric's life insurance. But what I really needed wasn't money. I needed help. I called my mom. My voice shook. "Mom, I can't do this alone. Could you help me with Lauren? Just for a few months? I'll pay you whatever you want." There was a long pause. "Oh, honey," Mom said, and for a second, I thought she might say yes. Then she added, "You know I'm not as young as I used to be. Taking care of a baby is hard. And, with my blood pressure, I can't take that risk. Maybe you could hire someone. You have insurance money now, right?" Her words hit me like a slap. I thought about all those years she spent taking care of Helen. How she didn't work because Helen needed her full-time. But now, when I needed her, when her granddaughter needed her, she said no. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'll figure something out." And I did. I found a wonderful nanny named Diane. She loved Lauren like her own. The insurance money made it possible. I had enough money to give my daughter the best care. Slowly, we started to settle into a new routine. Lauren grew from a baby into a happy toddler, and every day, she looked more like Eric, especially her smile. Then one day, I got a call about Helen's engagement. "Your sister is marrying Brian Johnson," Mom said excitedly. "His family owns that big real estate company. Can you believe it?" "That's great," I said, watching Lauren play on the living room floor, stacking her blocks. "I'm happy for her." But the next call wasn't so cheerful. Dad sounded worried. "Kelly, we need to talk about Helen's wedding," he said. "We're taking out a loan using the house as security." When he told me how much, I felt sick.
Dad, no.
"That house is your home and your future. You can't risk everything for just one day." "Now listen here," he said in that serious voice I remembered from when I was a kid. "We're not going to let the Johnsons think we can't give Helen a proper wedding. We already signed the papers." I tried to talk them out of it. I even offered to help pay for a smaller, simpler wedding. But Mom got upset. "You don't understand, Kelly. This is Helen's big day. She deserves her dream wedding. We can't let her new family think we're poor or ordinary." I thought about my own wedding, small, simple, and perfect. Eric and I had paid for it ourselves. We were proud to start our life without any debt. But Helen always needed more. Helen's wedding was exactly what I expected. Huge, flashy, and over the top. And according to Mom, it was absolutely perfect. Then Helen and Brian moved to Providence. And just like that, their perfect daughter wasn't so perfect anymore. She won't even answer our calls. Mom cried over the phone one evening. We took out that loan for her, and now she won't help us pay it back. I wanted to say, "I told you so," but I didn't. I just said, "That must be really hard, Mom." Little by little, my parents started calling more often. Not just when they needed money. They wanted to see Lauren. They invited us for Thursday dinners. They even remembered my birthday for the first time in years. It felt good, like maybe we could finally be a real family. I started helping them more. I paid some of their bills, bought groceries, and for their 36th wedding anniversary, I surprised them with a 3-week vacation to Louisiana and a new car for Dad. "You're such a good daughter, Kelly," Mom said, hugging me. It was the first time she had ever done that. I couldn't remember the last time Mom hugged me like that. Then Dad got really sick. It was something with his heart, and he couldn't work for months. One evening, after I had put Lauren to bed, they asked me to come over. "We're going to lose the house," Dad said quietly. His voice sounded weak. "We can't make the loan payments without my income." Mom was crying. "We don't know what to do, Kelly. We're already behind on the payments." "Move in with us," Mom suddenly suggested. "We can help with Lauren after school, and you can help with the loan payments." Please, sweetheart, she added. We don't want to lose our home. I thought about my own apartment, my freedom, the life I had built for myself, and Lauren. I don't know, Mom, I said. It's a 1-hour drive to work from here. Please, Dad said again, and I saw real fear in his eyes. We'll figure it out. Lauren would love having her grandparents around. And they were right about that part. When I told Lauren we might move in with Grandma and Grandpa, her face lit up with joy. Within a month, we moved in. I found good renters for my apartment, a young couple with stable jobs who signed a 1-year lease. Lauren was thrilled, running around the house like it was a magical castle, exploring every room. I started paying the loan and covering most of the house expenses. Mom changed almost overnight. She became the loving grandma she had never been before, picking Lauren up from school, helping with her homework, making her favorite snacks. Look what Grandma made for you, Lauren, she'd say, holding out a tray of fresh cookies. Lauren would smile so big, and I'd try not to think about all the times I came home as a child to an empty kitchen and no one there. For a while, everything seemed okay. Dad slowly got better. I got used to the long drive to work, reminding myself it was worth it to see Lauren happy. Each time I made the loan payment, I reminded myself I was helping my parents keep their home. But there was always a little voice in my head asking, how long will this last? When will something go wrong? After Dad went back to work, I noticed Mom started making excuses. My back hurts today, Kelly. I'm not as young as I used to be. It's just too tiring to keep up with Lauren. Then one morning, she finally said it clearly. I think you should hire a nanny. I just can't handle this anymore. So I did. I hired Janet, a kind older woman who got along with Lauren right away. And every morning, as I drove that long hour to work, I started to wonder, why was I still living in my parents' house? I had a perfectly good apartment across town, but every time I brought up moving back, Mom would bake her famous apple pie, the one Lauren loved most, and say things like, oh, but we love having you both here. Don't we live so nicely together? Lauren would smile, her face covered in apple filling, and I'd hold back my frustration for one more month. This went on for 3 years. Then one evening, after Lauren went to bed, Mom and Dad sat me down. Honey, Mom began, her eyes already filling with tears, we still have 2 more years left on Helen's wedding loan. Dad added quickly, we know it's a big favor, but could you stay until it's paid off? We're so close to being done. I thought about my long drive to work, how my life had been paused for years. But then I thought about how happy Lauren was living with her grandparents. Okay, I said. 1 more year. I called my tenants and extended their lease. Then came the day everything changed. After a long day at work, I walked up to the house and saw Helen standing at the front door, very pregnant. Move away from the door, Helen. Mom yelled from inside. You'll catch a cold in that breeze. Helen gave me a smirk and stepped aside. Well, look who's here. Inside, it felt like stepping into the past. Mom was fussing over Helen, fixing pillows, checking her temperature, asking if she needed anything. I made your favorite dinner, Helen, she said sweetly. And there's special tea for the baby. Then during dinner, Helen dropped her news. I've decided to have the baby here, she said. So, you and Dad can help with the newborn. Mom lit up like a Christmas tree. Of course we will. We'll help with everything. I sat there frozen, my fork in midair. Suddenly, I remembered the night I called Mom after Eric died, begging for help with 4-month-old Lauren. You know I can't risk my health taking care of a baby, Kelly, she had said back then. I looked at Mom and, for the first time, truly saw it. I saw what I had been pretending not to see for years. Nothing had changed. Nothing would ever change. Helen would always be the one they rushed to help, and I would always be the one expected to understand. For the next 3 weeks, I watched it all happen again, just like when we were younger. Mom served Helen breakfast in bed, made her doctor's appointments, and filled the kitchen with all her favorite snacks. The monthly apple pie, the one Mom always baked to make Lauren and me feel welcome, was gone. And then came the moment that pushed me too far. When I overheard Mom and Helen talking about turning my room and Lauren's room into a nursery, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I walked into the living room where everyone was sitting. So that's it? You're just going to act like the last few years didn't happen? Like Helen didn't leave you with a huge loan that I've been helping to pay. Helen rolled her eyes. Oh great, here comes perfect Kelly to save the day. Helen, sweetie, don't get upset, it's not good for the baby, Mom said, fussing over her. No, let's talk about this, I said firmly. Let's talk about how you mortgaged your house for her big wedding and then she disappeared. Let's talk about how I've been making those loan payments while she was off enjoying her life. That's none of your business, Helen snapped. No one asked you to pay anything. If you're so unhappy, why don't you just go back to your precious little apartment? Kelly, Mom cut in, pushing me gently toward the door. Why don't you go to the store for us? We need a few things. She shoved a shopping list into my hands. It'll give everyone a chance to calm down. I felt like a child being told to leave the room, but I went anyway, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. 25 minutes later, I came back with the groceries and stopped in shock. Lauren was sitting on the front steps crying. Around her were bags and boxes, all our things thrown outside. Mommy, she ran to me sobbing. Aunt Helen yelled at me. She said we had to leave. And when I cried, she scared me and pushed all our stuff outside. Something inside me broke. I rushed into the house. How dare you? I shouted. How dare you treat my daughter like that? Kelly, calm down, Dad said. No. I'm done staying quiet, I yelled. When Eric died, and I begged for help with Lauren, you told me you couldn't risk your health. But the moment Helen needs anything, you all jump to help her. I paid your bills. I helped pay your loan. I helped save your house. And this is how you repay me? By throwing my child out. Now listen here, Mom began. No, you listen, I shouted. I've spent my whole life being the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who's supposed to understand and wait while Helen gets everything. I gave you everything I had, and you gave me nothing but leftover attention, only when Helen wasn't around to take it. I threw the grocery bags across the room. Cans rolled across the floor. Eggs cracked. Vegetables scattered everywhere. Mom gasped. Helen just smirked. Dad's face turned red. Get out, he shouted. Get out of our house, and don't ever come back. You're no daughter of ours, Mom said, her voice cold. We never want to see you again. I stood there, breathing hard, staring at the people who were supposed to be my family. Then I turned around and walked away, closing the door on 29 years of trying to be enough for them. Out on the sidewalk, surrounded by bags and boxes we had packed in a hurry, I felt completely lost. Lauren held my hand tightly, her little face covered in tears. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, trying to think straight. Our apartment was still rented out for another year, and I couldn't just ask the tenants to leave right away. I had to give them 4 months' notice. I called a nearby hotel first, then ordered a big Uber to take us and our things. That night, after Lauren fell asleep in the hotel bed, I sat in the dark with my laptop, searching for a short-term place to stay. The next morning, I found a small furnished apartment that rented month to month. It was about 20 minutes from my office. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. While Lauren ate breakfast, I called my tenant. Hi, Anna, I said. I hate to do this, but I need to give you notice. Some things have changed with my family. Anna was kind and calm. Of course. We'll start looking for a new place right away. Take care, Kelly. The next 4 months felt strange. Our temporary apartment didn't feel like home, but at least we had a roof over our heads. Lauren was quieter than usual, dealing with everything in her own way. Finally, after what felt like forever, Anna called and said they had found a new place. Exactly 4 months after we were thrown out of my parents' house, Lauren and I returned to our apartment. The moment I turned the key and stepped inside, something changed in me. This was our home. Our safe place. No drama. No walking on eggshells. No feeling like I had to fight for love or respect. We're home, I said. Lauren ran from room to room, smiling and playing with the toys and books we had left behind. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat down and looked at our finances. We were in good shape. Better than ever, actually. Without sending money to my parents, I had extra savings each month. I opened a new bank account just for Lauren's college fund and set up automatic transfers to add money each month. Over the next few weeks, we settled into a happy routine again. Lauren returned to her old school, and her friends were so excited to see her. I focused on my job and earned a promotion I had been too distracted to go after while living with my parents. 7 quiet months passed. Lauren and I found our rhythm again: school, work, movie nights, and weekend adventures. No guilt, no tension, no more painful family drama. Just us. Then one Thursday morning there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I looked through the peephole. My heart dropped. It was my parents, and they were holding a baby. Even though I knew better, I opened the door. "Kelly, please," Mom said, already crying. "We need your help," Dad added. He looked older, more tired than I remembered. Then they told me everything, standing right there at my door. I hadn't even invited them in. Helen's husband had found out she was cheating. A DNA test showed the baby wasn't his. He divorced her and said he wanted nothing to do with the child. And Helen? She left the baby with my parents and disappeared. "We don't know where she is," Mom sobbed. "She won't answer our calls." "We can't do this alone, Kelly," she continued. "We need you to move back in. Help with the loan payments. Help with the baby." "I'm too old to take care of an infant," Mom added, giving me that same tired look I'd seen so many times before. "Please, sweetheart. If you don't help, we'll lose the house." I looked at them. Really looked. Mom's fake tears. Dad's desperate face. The innocent baby in their arms. And suddenly, everything became clear. "No," I said quietly. Mom stopped crying instantly. "What?" she asked, shocked. I said no. I repeated. "I won't help you. Not this time." "How can you be so cold?" Mom raised her voice. "We're your family. We'll be out on the street. They'll take our house. All because you're too selfish to help." Doors in the hallway started opening. Neighbors peeked out to see what was going on. "You want to talk about selfish?" I said, my voice calm but firm. "Let's talk about how you refused to help me when Eric died and I had a 4-month-old baby. Let's talk about how you used your house as a loan for Helen's big wedding, and how Helen ran away and left you with a debt, just like she left her baby now. This isn't me being heartless. This is you finally dealing with the results of your own choices." "How dare you?" Dad began. "No, how dare you?" I cut in. "You created this mess with your constant favoritism. You let Helen think she could do anything and never face consequences. And now, you want me to clean up her mess again?"
No.
"I'm done." "We're your parents," Mom cried. "No," I said firmly. "You're Helen's parents. You made that clear the night you threw my daughter out like she didn't matter. Now leave. And don't come back. Forget my address. Forget my phone number. Forget I exist. Just like you did for most of my life." I closed the door on their begging voices and leaned against it, breathing hard. Through the door, I heard nothing but silence. I could still hear Mom shouting through the door, but it didn't bother me anymore. "Mommy." Lauren stood in the hallway, watching me. "Are you okay?" I walked over and hugged her tightly. "Yes, baby. I'm better than okay. I'm free." That was the last time I ever saw my parents. I don't know what happened to them, or to Helen or the baby. Sometimes Lauren asks about them, and I tell her the truth. I explain that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away from people who keep hurting you, even if they're your family. Now, our life is good. Lauren is doing great in school. I love my job. And together, we're building the kind of life I always wished for, a life full of real love, not guilt or pressure. Sometimes at night, I look at old family pictures and feel a small ache in my heart for what might have been. But then I look at Lauren, growing up strong, safe, and knowing that she is deeply loved, and I know, without a doubt, I made the right choice. I had picked a soft blue dress for the occasion, something elegant but not too showy. After all, the spotlight was supposed to be on my daughter, not me. Amelia had just graduated with honors, and we were gathered at a private dining room in an upscale restaurant to celebrate her achievement. The space buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and the warmth that comes with family and friends gathering for something good. I sat at the head table, smiling, soaking in Amelia's joy. Gregory, my husband of 28 years, stood up to give a toast. I watched him raise his glass, his expression unreadable, and I felt something shift inside me. I knew that look. Cold, detached, calculated. "I've decided to start a new life," he said, pausing just enough for the silence to fall heavy across the room. "Without Bianca." For a few seconds, no one moved. Silverware froze in midair. The laughter died in throats. Dozens of eyes darted between Gregory and me, waiting, some in confusion, others with anticipation for my reaction. People expect drama in moments like this.
Tears.
Screaming. Maybe even a drink thrown across the room. But I didn't give them any of that. Instead, I reached into my purse and pulled out a small sealed envelope. Without a word, I stood up, walked to Gregory, and placed it gently in his hand. My fingers didn't tremble. My eyes didn't water. I smiled at him, not warm, but not cold either. Just final. Then I turned to Amelia, kissed her on the forehead, whispered, "I'm proud of you," and walked out. He followed me, of course. "Angela." "Wait. What is this?" he called out, waving the envelope like it might bite him. I didn't stop. The click of my heels against the polished marble echoed in the corridor as I exited the restaurant and stepped out into the evening air. He caught up to me just outside. "Angela," he said again, breathless now. "What the hell is going on?" I looked at him for a moment, my silence louder than anything I could have said. Then I walked away. That envelope? It wasn't some emotional note. It was a carefully prepared document. Copies of emails, screenshots of late-night transactions, bank statements, and proof of hotel bookings under a different name. For the past 3 months, I had known about him and his new flame. A woman barely older than our daughter. I had also known about the offshore accounts, the money he'd been siphoning quietly, maybe thinking I would notice or wouldn't understand. But I noticed everything. I didn't explode. I didn't accuse. I just observed. And then I made plans. That night, as I sat alone in the small guest house I'd secretly been renting for the past few weeks, I let myself exhale. The hardest part was over, not the betrayal itself, but keeping it together long enough to give Amelia the graduation day she deserved. Because this wasn't about Gregory anymore.
This wasn't even about me.
It was about making sure my daughter didn't associate one of the most important milestones in her life with humiliation or chaos. Gregory thought he was delivering the shock of the evening. He had no idea I'd already packed most of my things, moved key assets into a private account, and filed a quiet petition through my attorney. The envelope was not a reaction. It was the final move in a game he didn't know I was playing. And the best part? I hadn't raised my voice once. When I got back home that evening, the house felt unnaturally still. The kind of stillness that settles right before a storm rolls in. But I wasn't scared of the storm. I had already stood in the middle of it, watched it build, and made sure I was prepared when it hit. Gregory's things were already packed. Neat rows of designer suit jackets hung in garment bags by the front door. A few boxes were stacked beside them, his files, golf clubs, and the framed photo of his late father, which he always kept on his desk. So, he had planned to leave after the celebration. The champagne toast turned ambush wasn't spontaneous. He must have practiced those words, maybe even in the mirror. I imagined him rehearsing it like a performance, thinking he'd catch me off guard. But the thing he never understood about me was this: I don't crumble under pressure. I don't scream. I don't beg. I calculate. I walked through the living room, past the untouched cake he'd insisted we order for Amelia. The congratulations banner still hung crookedly from the mantel. My heels clicked softly on the hardwood as I made my way to the kitchen, where I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. I didn't cry. A soft knock on the side door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Amelia. Her makeup was smudged from tears, her gown slightly wrinkled, and her eyes wide with confusion and heartbreak. Mom, she whispered. What's happening? I opened my arms, and she folded into them like she did when she was a little girl. I'm okay, I whispered into her hair. I promise you I'm okay. I just didn't want a day to be about anything else but your success. She pulled back to look at me. Did you know? I nodded gently.
For a while now.
But this wasn't your burden to carry. Not today. She stayed for a few more minutes before quietly leaving for her friend's place, saying she needed time to process. I didn't stop her. She deserved that space. An hour later, the front door burst open. Gregory stomped inside like he owned the air between the walls. His face was red, his tie loosened, and the envelope crumpled in his hand. What the hell is this? He barked, slamming the papers on the kitchen counter. I didn't flinch. I took another sip of my water and calmly looked him in the eye. You don't get to raise your voice in this house. Not anymore. I asked you a question, Angela. Were you spying on me? No, I said quietly. I was protecting myself. His jaw clenched. You've been collecting this crap behind my back? You ambushed me. You mean like how you ambushed me in front of 50 people while our daughter was still wearing her graduation cap? He said nothing, just stared. I stepped around the island and placed a folder beside the envelope he just tossed. These are certified copies of every wire transfer you made from our joint account to your private one. Every hotel booking is with your little weekend getaway partner. And all the emails you sent to her from your office laptop. He blinked once. Then again. This is insane. I also had a copy of our prenuptial agreement reviewed by my attorney. I continued, cutting him off. Remember that clause you insisted was unnecessary? The one that stated if either of us committed infidelity, they forfeited claim to the marital estate. Silence. You're bluffing, he muttered. No court will. They will, I said, my tone sharp now, because I didn't just get emotional, Gregory. I got legal. Everything is backed up, time-stamped, and validated. He sank into the nearest chair like the weight of the truth finally hit him. Why didn't you say anything sooner? He asked, quieter this time. Because I didn't want a messy divorce. I didn't want Amelia dragged into shouting matches. I didn't want my dignity shattered while you tried to rewrite the story. So I waited. I let you believe you had the upper hand. He looked at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing across from him. I know who she is, I added. I even know her lease is under your name. I could have ruined you, Gregory.
But I chose not to.
You did that all by yourself. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. For once, the man who always had something to say, some excuse, some deflection was silent. I walked away, leaving him sitting in his mess, and went upstairs. I didn't slam the door.
I didn't cry.
I had already done all my grieving long before that night. Diana's home felt nothing like mine, yet strangely, it brought a comfort I hadn't expected. Warm, lived in, full of family photos and soft throws that smelled faintly of lavender. Diana, Gregory's older sister, opened her arms without hesitation the moment I showed up at her doorstep, suitcase in hand, and a tired smile masking the emotional exhaustion underneath. You don't even have to explain, she said gently, guiding me inside. You're safe here, Angela. Whatever you need. I had always liked Diana. She was sharp, no-nonsense, and fiercely loyal to the truth. Despite being Gregory's sister, she'd never been blind to his flaws. And when she heard what happened, her only reaction was quiet rage on my behalf. 2 nights later, Amelia arrived with puffy eyes and trembling hands. She collapsed into my arms the second she walked through the door. I held her like I used to when she scraped her knee as a child. Only now the wounds were deeper, wounds I couldn't just kiss and fix. I can't even look at him, she whispered. He didn't just leave you, Mom. He left all of us. I didn't say much. I just stroked her hair, silently mourning the version of her father she had believed in. Some betrayals hit harder when they touch not just a marriage, but a child's trust. We tried to create some form of normalcy in Diana's home, morning tea, evening walks, quiet dinners. But peace never lasts when ego is involved. Late one afternoon, the front doorbell rang. Diana peeked through the window and shot me a glance. It's him. And he brought her. I rose slowly. Let them in. Gregory walked in with Cassandra trailing behind him, visibly uncomfortable, her eyes darting from the floor to Amelia to me. Gregory, on the other hand, looked furious but composed, the kind of composure that only comes before manipulation. We need to talk, he said, skipping pleasantries. I folded my arms. Go ahead. You froze all the accounts, Angela. I can't access the funds. My company cards are flagged. This is beyond petty. This is legal, I replied calmly, and temporary, until the court decides how things will be divided. Cassandra shifted beside him. You said everything was amicable. Gregory's jaw twitched. It was, until she started acting like a victim. Amelia stood up then, her voice trembling with fury. You humiliated Mom in front of everyone, lied to her and cheated. And now you're mad she's protecting herself. Amelia, this is between adults, Gregory started. No, it's not, she yelled. You broke this family, Dad. Don't pretend you're the one being wronged. The room fell quiet. Cassandra looked at Gregory like she was seeing something new. Or maybe something she had tried to ignore until now. You told me you and Angela had been separated for months, Cassandra said quietly. You said she was emotionally distant, that the divorce was mutual. I looked at her, but there was no hatred, just pity. Is that what he told you? I asked gently, because that's not what the court documents will say. Cassandra turned to Gregory. Did you lie to me? Cassandra, don't, he began, but she stepped back, like she needed physical space to process. You said you had your finances in order, that there wouldn't be any legal mess. But you didn't even tell me about the prenup. Or the house being in her name. That was when it happened. His mask cracked. Not completely, but enough. The smug assurance in his tone faltered. His voice wavered. He reached for Cassandra's hand, but she recoiled. You're not who I thought you were, she muttered before walking out the door. Gregory stood alone in the living room, shoulders slumped, the weight of consequences finally pressing against him. I gave you everything, he muttered. Everything I had. No, I said softly. You gave me what was convenient, but not once did you give me honesty, loyalty, or respect. And now you're shocked that I've chosen to take control?
He didn't respond.
Within 48 hours, my attorney had filed the necessary motions. All shared accounts were officially frozen. Gregory's access to our marital estate was restricted pending court review. Even his car lease, which I had co-signed, was suspended. The man who once moved through life with complete authority was now learning what it meant to be powerless. And Cassandra? She stopped answering his calls. Watching the illusion of his perfect narrative fall apart wasn't satisfying in the way I thought it would be. It didn't bring joy, but it brought something else, clarity. He had built his life around control and image, but now that both were slipping, all that remained was the truth. And I wasn't going to let him escape it. The courthouse was quiet that morning, too quiet. I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom in a navy blue suit I'd carefully chosen. Not too bold, not too soft. Just strong enough to remind myself I wasn't the same woman Gregory had so confidently tried to cast aside. My attorney sat beside me, flipping through files, calm and collected. I wasn't nervous. Not anymore. I had already faced the worst. Gregory arrived 10 minutes before the preliminary hearing started, flanked by two attorneys who looked far too young and slightly unprepared. One kept whispering in his ear, the other fumbling with paperwork as they rushed to organize their notes. He looked nothing like the man who used to command boardrooms. He looked tired.
Hollow. Beaten.
Inside, the hearing moved quickly. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, was already familiar with the documents. My legal team had submitted everything well ahead of time. Gregory's team scrambled to argue against the prenup's enforcement, claiming emotional coercion, but the judge barely entertained it. This agreement, she said, flipping through the signed pages, was clear. It included a fidelity clause, signed without duress, witnessed and notarized. It will be upheld. Gregory blinked like someone had just slapped him. His attorney tried again, stuttering through a rebuttal, but the judge had already moved on. Until the financial disclosures are complete and a final hearing is set, I'm freezing all joint marital accounts and assets. Temporary possession of the primary residence will remain with Mrs. Hartwell. Gregory turned to look at me for the first time that morning, disbelief painted across his face. I didn't flinch. I met his gaze with the same steady calm I had held since the night of Amelia's graduation. He underestimated me.
He thought I'd fall apart.
After the hearing, I stepped out into the sunlight, letting the warmth hit my face. For the first time in weeks, I breathed without the weight on my chest. 2 days later, Cassandra packed her things and moved out of the condo she and Gregory shared. I didn't hear it from him. I heard it from Diana, who got a tearful call from Cassandra herself. She didn't know, Diana told me, about the accounts, about the loans, about the fake investment portfolio he bragged about. Gregory had even borrowed against a business loan he'd never repaid. Cassandra was furious, humiliated, and heartbroken. She left a note behind and vanished from his life, without another word. He was losing everything, but more than that, he was losing the illusion of being the man in control. As for me, I didn't just sit around waiting for court dates. I started building. For years, I had been the woman behind the scenes, balancing the budget, planning the fundraisers, reviewing contracts Gregory didn't have time for. I had kept our family running like a well-oiled machine, while putting my own aspirations aside. Not anymore. I registered a consultancy firm using my maiden name, Angela Monroe and Company, specializing in event logistics and nonprofit strategy. It started small, just a website and a pitch deck I'd quietly worked on while staying at Diana's. But momentum built quickly. Old contacts from Amelia's school committees and charity boards reached out. My inbox is filled with opportunities. I wasn't trying to prove anything to Gregory or the world. I was just proving something to myself, that I was capable, valuable, and worthy of standing on my own. Word of Gregory's legal troubles spread quietly through our social circles. A few whispered conversations at luncheons, a couple of side eyes at networking events. The man who once enjoyed admiration for his charm and success was now associated with scandal, infidelity, and frozen accounts. People expected me to lash out, to take interviews or post cryptic social media updates. But I said nothing. I didn't need to explain myself. My silence became my power. One afternoon, while I was finalizing contracts for my first major client, I received an email from a former acquaintance, someone who used to praise Gregory at every function. I never realized how much you were holding up the foundation of that family. Watching how you've handled everything. It's inspiring. I didn't respond. I just smiled and closed the email. Because I wasn't looking for validation anymore. I had already won. Not in court, not on paper, but in the quiet strength it took to walk away with my dignity intact. In the patience it took to prepare. In the courage it took to start again. The morning of the final court hearing arrived with an odd stillness. The air was crisp, the sky clear, as if the universe itself had decided to pause for a moment. It didn't escape me that the date on the calendar, March 17th, marked what would have been our 29th wedding anniversary. Almost 3 decades of partnership, and yet here we were, about to sign the final page of its unraveling. I didn't wear black or gray. I wore ivory, a soft, clean slate of a color. Because this wasn't a funeral for my past, it was the birth of something new. In the courtroom, the proceedings were swift. After weeks of evidence, motions, and silence, the judge made her ruling with the finality of a gavel that echoed through every inch of my being. The prenuptial agreement stands as written, she said. Mrs. Hartwell will retain full ownership of the primary residence, her retirement accounts, and 70% of the marital investments. Gregory sat beside his attorney, shoulders sagging, his face pale. He didn't argue. Not today. The man who once controlled every room he walked into now looked like someone finally realizing what he'd gambled and lost. After the judgment, he approached me in the corridor. Not the same fiery, entitled man from weeks earlier. This version of Gregory looked smaller, weighed down by something heavier than just financial loss. "I'm sorry, Angela," he said quietly, "for everything." I looked at him for a long moment. Maybe part of me once would have wanted to hear those words. But not anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was simply done. I believe you, I said. But I also believe that sorry doesn't always change things. He nodded, eyes searching mine. Do you think, maybe one day? No, I interrupted gently. There's no going back to something I had to fight my way out of. And just like that, I walked away. No dramatic exit. No last word. Just a quiet, final step toward the life I had rebuilt piece by piece. Caldwell Financial Transitions was no longer just a budding firm. It had grown into a full-scale consultancy, helping women navigate the emotional and financial chaos of divorce and major life changes. What started as a seed of independence in Diana's guest room had become something meaningful, something mine. Clients came through referrals, then online searches, then eventually word of mouth. I hired a team. I trained young women who reminded me of myself, smart, capable, and underestimated. Amelia, now working part-time while applying to law schools, helped me review client cases. She handled contracts like a pro and asked thoughtful questions during meetings. More than once, I caught her pausing during lunch just to say, "I'm proud of you, Mom." She had come through her heartbreak, too, with a strength I admired deeply. We had become each other's soft landing and strongest backbone. On the anniversary of our final court date, exactly 1 year later, I hosted a quiet gathering at my home. Just close friends, Diana and Amelia. No speeches, no decorations. Just food, laughter, and warmth. At one point, while standing by the kitchen window, I looked out over the backyard where we'd once hosted Gregory's company barbecues. I didn't feel sadness. I felt clarity. That betrayal? It had once broken me. I won't pretend otherwise. But now, standing in my kitchen, in a home that was legally and emotionally mine, I saw it for what it had truly been, the moment that gave me my life back. It had stripped away the noise, the illusions, and the role I had been expected to play. And underneath all that, I found a woman who didn't just survive, she reinvented herself. Fully, fiercely, peacefully. I hadn't just escaped the ruins of a marriage. I had built something stronger in its place myself. My name is Madison, and I'm 21 years old. I live with my parents and my younger sister, Jacqueline, who is 14. These days, Mom and Dad work long hours at the local factory just to pay the bills. But life wasn't always like this. When I was younger, things were very different. My parents owned a successful business, and we lived in a big, beautiful one-story house with a porch that went all the way around. I used to sit there and dream about my future. I still remember the sweet smell of Mom's garden roses and the sound of Dad laughing during family game nights in our big living room. Everything started to change when I was 16. The business began to fail, and things quickly went downhill. One bad month turned into many, and soon we were deep in debt. We lost the house first. I'll never forget the day we moved out. Jacqueline was happily skipping down the driveway, not knowing we weren't coming back. She was only 9 and too young to understand why we were moving into a small, crowded apartment instead of going home. To help out, I started working part-time at Tham's cafe after school. I served coffee and sandwiches to people who once came to our house for dinner parties. It felt strange, but we needed the money. Mom and Dad both got jobs at the factory, but with the leftover debts and daily bills, it still wasn't enough. While I was getting used to eating instant noodles and wearing second-hand clothes, Jacqueline seemed to be living in a different world. She'd come home from school asking for new phones, fancy clothes, and big birthday parties. Somehow, Mom and Dad always gave her what she wanted. "She's too young to understand," they'd say. "We don't want her to feel left out. But can we really afford this?" I'd ask, watching them swipe their credit card again, even though it was already full. "Don't worry about it, Madison," Mom would say, brushing Jacqueline's hair. "She just needs time to get used to everything." But how could Jacqueline get used to something she didn't even know was happening? While I was saving every penny and working extra hours, Jacqueline acted like nothing had changed. Getting that college scholarship felt like I had won the lottery. I still remember the day the acceptance letter came. Mom and Dad hugged me, And even Jacqueline looked a little impressed, though she quickly went back to playing on her new iPad. "You've always been the smart one," Dad said, his eyes filled with pride. That was one of the rare times I felt seen. Usually, all the attention went to Jacqueline. College was hard but worth it. While other students complained about their student loans, I felt grateful every day for the scholarship that let me study without worry. I majored in business administration, hoping I could help my parents rebuild what they had lost. The day I graduated, I already had a job waiting for me at the Stanton law firm, one of the bigger companies in our town. The salary wasn't huge, but it was enough to help my family. I chose to stay at home, not just to save money, but because I knew my parents still needed help with the never-ending bills. But life wasn't smooth. I stopped spending on clothes and eating out, so I could help with expenses. Meanwhile, Jacqueline's spending only seemed to grow. One evening, I came home really tired after a long day at work. My stomach was growling because I had skipped lunch to finish a project. I opened the fridge, hoping to find something to eat, but there was only some ketchup and a half-empty milk carton. "Mom, what's for dinner?" I called out, already guessing the answer. "Oh, honey, we're a bit short this week," she said from the living room. "Maybe we can order pizza?" Just then, Jacqueline came bouncing down the stairs wearing what looked like a brand new designer jacket. The price tag was still hanging on it. It said $200. That money could have bought enough groceries for 1 week's. "Where did that jacket come from?" I asked, trying to keep calm. "Isn't it cute?" Jacqueline smiled, spinning around. "Kelly and Joyce both have one, and Mom said I could get it too." "Mom, are you serious?" I turned to her. "We don't even have food in the house, but Jacqueline gets another jacket." "Madison, please." Mom sighed in that tone I hated, the one that made me feel like I was being unreasonable. "Jacqueline needs to fit in at school. You know how teenagers are." "Yeah, Madison," Jacqueline added, rolling her eyes. "You don't get it. All my friends have the latest stuff. It's so embarrassing when I'm the only one without new phone or clothes." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her what real embarrassment felt like having to wear the same clothes to work several times a week because I was using all my money to pay off family debts. But I stayed quiet, just standing there as Jacqueline looked at herself in the mirror while my stomach growled. "We need to talk about what's really important," I said, trying to speak to my parents. "We can't keep living like this. Jacqueline needs to understand. Jacqueline needs to fit in with her friends," Dad said, cutting me off without even looking up from his newspaper. "You know how mean kids can be at her school, all those rich girls with their fancy stuff." I gave up trying to argue. How could I win against Jacqueline's tears and my parents' never-ending excuses? While I was counting every dollar I spent, Jacqueline's friends kept getting newer, fancier things, and my parents kept trying to make sure she didn't feel left out, even if it meant we had no food. It all started with $5,000. I kept the cash hidden in my wallet behind my driver's license. It was my emergency fund, something I had slowly saved up dollar by dollar. One morning, I opened my wallet to add $10 from my paycheck, and the money was gone. Just gone. My hands shook as I emptied the wallet onto my bed. I checked every pocket, twice, even 2 times, but deep down I already knew what had happened. I had seen Jacqueline looking at my wallet the day before when I left it on the kitchen counter while making dinner. "Jacqueline," I shouted, walking straight into her room without knocking. "Did you take money from my wallet?" She looked up from her phone, eyes wide, trying to look innocent.
What? No.
"How could you even think that?" "There's $5,000 missing," I said. "And you're the only one who—" "I can't believe you," she cried, suddenly bursting into tears. Real tears, with mascara running down her face. "How dare you say I stole from you? I'm your sister." Her crying was so loud, it brought Mom rushing into the room. "What's going on in here?" she asked. "Madison thinks," Jacqueline began, sobbing harder. "I stole money from her." Jacqueline cried loudly, throwing herself into Mom's arms. "She hates me. She's always hated me because you love me more." Mom gave me that disappointed look I knew all too well. "How could you accuse your sister of something like that?" I stood there and watched Jacqueline's dramatic act, and for a moment, I actually started to question myself. Maybe I had misplaced the money. Maybe I spent it and forgot. Maybe someone at work had taken it. After that, I stopped keeping cash. I decided to only use my card. No more missing money, no more confusion. Problem solved, or at least that's what I thought. Then came the dress. I was doing laundry when Jacqueline walked through the front door, smiling and wearing a fancy dress that looked like it came from Margaret, one of those brands where the dress costs more than our monthly rent. Where did that come from? I asked, holding a bunch of wet clothes. Oh, this old thing, she said, spinning around as the fabric swirled around her legs. I've had it forever. Mom?
Dad.
I called out. Did you buy Jacqueline another expensive dress? They both looked confused. Dad frowned and said, No, we didn't buy her any dress. That's when alarm bells started ringing in my head. Where was a 14-year-old getting designer clothes like that? The thoughts that followed made my stomach twist. Was she stealing? Hanging out with bad people? Doing something dangerous to get money? That night, I sat at my desk with all kinds of scary thoughts going through my head. Then I remembered my bank card. With shaky hands, I logged into my online bank account and asked for a full statement from the past month. 1 day later, I got it in my email. 3 charges stood out right away. $770 at Bloomingdale's, $500 at Rockefeller Center, $900 at Bergdorf Goodman. Each one had details listed: a size 3 cocktail dress, a medium blouse, size 5 shoes. All of them were Jacqueline sizes. All her favorite brands. All her new clothes. My stomach dropped. Over $2,170 gone. Jacqueline hadn't just taken money from my wallet. She had been using my credit card the whole time. The new dress wasn't stolen from a store or given to her. It was bought with my money. And I hadn't even noticed. I found her in her room, trying on one of the new outfits. My outfit, technically, since I paid for it. Nice dress, I said, leaning on the doorframe. Bergdorf Goodman, right? About $900. She froze in the middle of spinning, but only for a second. What are you talking about? Stop pretending, Jacqueline, I said. I have the credit card statements right here. I held up the papers. 3 shopping trips, $2,170. All in your size. All from your favorite stores. You're crazy, Jacqueline said, but her voice shook a little. Really? I said. Should we call the stores? I bet their cameras caught some interesting videos. Want to see yourself shopping with my card? Jacqueline's face turned pale for a second, but she quickly acted normal again. Whatever. You can't prove anything.
Mom.
Dad, I shouted. Family meeting now. They both came into the living room. Dad was still in his work clothes, and Mom was wiping her hands on a dish towel. I laid the bank papers on the coffee table. Look at these, I said, pointing at the charges. Jacqueline used my credit card. She spent $2,170 on clothes. Dad frowned and adjusted his glasses. Madison, that's a big accusation. Are you sure you didn't just forget? Forget spending $2,170 on clothes? In Jacqueline's size. I said, shocked. Really, Dad? Mom picked up the papers and looked at the list. Well, even if, and I'm not saying she did, but even if Jacqueline used your card, she's at a difficult age. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? She stole from me, I said. Teenagers do silly things sometimes, Mom said, gently holding Jacqueline's hand. It's just part of growing up. Remember when you were her age? When I was her age, I wasn't stealing thousands of dollars from my family. I shouted. Don't be so dramatic, Madison, Mom said with a sigh. If it was Jacqueline, and we're not saying it was, maybe we just think of it as an early birthday gift. I stared at her in disbelief. A birthday gift? She stole from me. That's credit card fraud. Now you're just making it sound worse than it is, Mom said, waving her hand like it didn't matter. Jacqueline is going through changes. Her friends have nice things, and she's trying to fit in. You need to be more understanding. Understanding, I said, feeling like I was losing my mind. She stole $2,170 from me. Madison, Dad finally spoke up. Your mom's right. You're making too much of this. Just let it go. Jacqueline sat there the whole time with a small smile on her face. She knew she'd won. She always won. You don't understand what you're doing, I said, my voice shaking with frustration. This isn't even about the money anymore. If Jacqueline is stealing from family now, what's next? She could get into serious trouble later. There it is, Dad said, shaking his head. You're jealous. You've always been jealous of your sister. I let out a bitter laugh. Jealous? Of what? Being a thief? Being spoiled rotten? See, Mom said, pointing at me. This is what jealousy looks like. You just can't handle that we give Jacqueline nice things. I couldn't stay in that house another minute. It felt like the walls were closing in, and every look from my family felt like another stab in the back. I grabbed my car keys and drove through the dark streets, not really knowing where I was going. Somehow, I ended up outside Evelyn's apartment. She had been my closest friend since we started working together, and right then, I needed someone who would understand and tell me the truth. Evelyn's apartment always felt safe. She listened without interrupting while I told her everything: the stolen money, the credit card charges, and how my parents refused to see what was really happening. The wine she poured helped me calm down, but it didn't take away the pain of how my family had betrayed me. This is crazy, Evelyn said when I finished talking. Your sister needs a serious wake-up call before she ends up in real trouble. I've tried everything, I said with a tired sigh. They just keep making excuses for her. Evelyn was quiet for a moment, gently spinning the wine in her glass. You know, my Uncle Mark's a police officer. Maybe he could help. I looked up. What do you mean? He could stop by your house and talk to your sister. Scare her a bit. Help her understand this isn't a joke. He's done it before for other families. Sometimes kids need to see how serious things can get. Over the next 1 days, we made a plan. Everything had to feel real. Jacqueline needed to believe she was actually in trouble. We planned it for dinner time, so everyone would be home. That evening, we sat around the table like it was any normal night. Mom had made lasagna, and the smell filled the house. Normally, that smell felt warm and comforting. But tonight, I couldn't eat. My stomach was in knots. Jacqueline talked the most, like she always did. She had no idea her world was about to change. I'll get it, she said cheerfully when the doorbell rang. She probably thought it was one of her friends. But when she opened the door and saw Officer Richard standing there in full uniform, his badge shining under the porch light, everything changed. Her face turned pale, and she stepped back, almost tripping over her feet. What's going on? Mom said, rushing to the door. Dad was right behind her. I called them, I said as I stood up from the table. My voice was steady, even though my heart was beating fast. Someone stole $2,170 from my credit card. I want to know who did it. Officer Richard stood in the living room. The room felt heavy and quiet. Jacqueline had dropped onto the couch, already crying. Our parents stood nearby, looking confused and worried. Miss Jacqueline, Officer Richard began. His voice was firm but calm. We have strong evidence that credit card fraud happened at this address. Store records, camera footage, and witness statements all point to you. Jacqueline cried even harder, but Officer Richard didn't stop. I've seen cases like this before. Good kids from good homes who thought stealing a little money wouldn't matter. Do you know where most of them end up? He paused and let the silence sink in. Jacqueline shook her head slightly, her mascara running down her face. There was a girl about your age, he said. She started by stealing from her family just like this. She thought it was no big deal. Last month, I had to arrest her for grand theft. She could go to jail for years. He leaned in a bit. Is that what you want for yourself, Jacqueline? Mom tried to speak, but Officer Richard raised his hand. Ma'am, your daughter needs to understand how serious this is. Credit card fraud is a crime. Right now, we can handle this in the family if the money is returned and this behavior stops right away. But if it doesn't, he let the warning hang in the air. I watched from the doorway as Jacqueline broke down under the pressure. She was finally facing the truth. When Officer Richard left, I thought my parents would finally see things clearly. I hoped they'd understand why I was so worried about Jacqueline. But I was completely wrong. As soon as the door closed, Mom turned on me with anger I had never seen before. "How dare you?" she screamed. Her face was twisted with rage. "How could you bring the police into this house?" I stepped back, shocked. Mom never used that kind of language. "She's 14, Mom shouted. "She's just a child, and you brought the police to scare her? What kind of person does that?" "I was trying to help her," I said quietly. "She needed to see." "You weren't trying to help anyone," Mom snapped. "You're just jealous. You've always been jealous of Jacqueline. You're a selfish, ungrateful girl." Dad, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. His voice was low but full of cold anger. "Get out," he said. "Get out of this house. You're no daughter of mine. No daughter of mine would do this to her sister." I looked at both of them, Mom, red with anger, Dad, cold and distant, and then at Jacqueline, who now wore a small, smug smile behind her tears. And just like that, I felt very calm. The next morning, I packed up my life into boxes and bags. It was strange how 16 years of memories could fit into such a small space. Every item reminded me of something: my high school graduation photo, the mug I used every morning, and the blanket Mom gave me for Christmas years ago. I left that blanket behind. Jacqueline stood in her doorway, watching me carry the boxes to my car. She didn't offer to help, and I didn't ask. Mom and Dad had already left for work without saying goodbye. The silence in the house felt heavy. Finding a new place wasn't hard. My job at the Stanton law firm paid well, so I was able to rent a small one-bedroom apartment across town. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. No stolen credit cards, no family drama, no guilt, just peace and quiet. That first month, I started building a new life. I bought used furniture, found the cheapest grocery store, and figured out which neighbors smiled back when I said hello. It wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. Then one Sunday evening, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Madison," she said, her voice softer than last time, "your father and I have been talking. We forgive you for what happened." I almost laughed. "They forgave me? We want you to come home," she continued. "And we need help with the loan payment this month. Things have been tight since you left." I felt the familiar guilt trying to creep in, but this time I didn't let it win. "No," I said. "You don't get to call me names, throw me out, and then ask for money. I'm done." "Madison, please," she began, but I ended the call and blocked her number. Then I blocked Dad and Jacqueline too. It felt awful, but also freeing. Next came the emails, messages saying they were behind on bills, begging for help. I blocked those too. Then came messages on social media, from old family friends, distant relatives, anyone they could reach out to. They all talked about family, forgiveness, and asked for money. I blocked them all. One Monday morning, they showed up at my office building. I watched from the third floor as they argued with the security guards in the lobby. I had already warned the guards not to let them up. Dad looked older than I remembered, shoulders slouched like the stress was too much. Mom was crying and causing a scene just like she always did. I turned away from the window and went back to my desk. There were contracts to read, meetings to attend, and a life to live, a life that was finally mine. It's been 5 months since I last talked to my family. My small apartment now feels like a real home. It's filled with plants, books, and a calm feeling I never knew I needed. Sometimes, when I sit on my secondhand couch with a cup of tea and watch the sunset through the window, I wonder how they're doing. Evelyn still tells me what she hears, even though I never ask. She lives nearby and runs into them sometimes. Last week, she said Dad got a second job at the hardware store. He works evenings and weekends now. I picture him, already tired from his factory job, spending his nights putting items on shelves. That thought weighs heavy on my heart. He's working so hard because they can't manage without the money I used to give them. Evelyn also said the bank is helping them change their loan plans. Mom's been going there a lot, crying and trying to make people feel sorry for her, the same way she used to do with me. But banks don't care about crying mothers or teenage daughters who want expensive clothes. They only care about getting paid. And now, my parents are running out of ways to pay. Their lifestyle has changed a lot since I left. No more shopping sprees for Jacqueline. No more fancy gadgets or designer things. Evelyn told me she saw Jacqueline wear the same clothes twice in 1 week. 5 months ago, that would have never happened. Part of me hopes this is teaching her something my parents never could. But honestly, I'm not sure it will. Sometimes, especially at night when everything is quiet, I feel guilty. I think about Dad, his rough hands from years of hard work, now counting items at the store instead of resting. I think about Mom, who, despite everything, is still my mother. I even think about Jacqueline, who is only 16, still a child in many ways, shaped by years of being spoiled. But then I remember the night they kicked me out. I remember Mom calling me trash. I remember Dad telling me I wasn't his daughter anymore. I remember Jacqueline smiling behind her fake tears. I remember all the years I gave everything I had, only to be treated like an aim, not a daughter. That guilt goes away. And what comes instead is a strong feeling that I need to protect the peace I've finally found. My friends tell me, people say I should try to make peace with my family, because family is family no matter what. But they don't understand that fixing things means both sides have to admit what went wrong. My parents still believe they did nothing wrong. They don't want to make things right. They just want their human ATM back. I'm sure Jacqueline hasn't thought much about me either, except when she misses her endless shopping trips. Maybe one day things will change. Maybe Dad will see that always protecting Jacqueline caused more harm than good. Maybe Mom will realize that love isn't about buying designer clothes or maxing out credit cards. Maybe Jacqueline will grow up and understand what she lost when she broke my trust. Maybe, just maybe, they'll miss me for who I am, not for the money I gave. But until that day comes, I'm living my own life. Last month, I got a promotion at work. Now, I'm even thinking about buying my own place instead of renting. I'm learning who I really am without the pressure of trying to please everyone in my family. And I've learned something important. It's possible to miss people and still know your life is better without them. My name is Rachel, and for the last 3 years, I've been watching my husband James slowly slip away. When we first found out he had stomach cancer, it felt like the ground had been pulled from under me. James was only 40 years old, doing well in his job as an investment banker, and we had a sweet 10-year-old son named Paul. We thought we had many happy years ahead of us. The only small comfort in this nightmare was that James's good income meant we could afford the best treatment possible. We flew to different specialists across the country, tried new therapies, and did everything we could, no matter the cost. But as time passed, it became clear that the treatments were only giving us more time, not a cure. Through all of this, James's parents, Lauren and Brian, were always there for us. They lived just 15 minutes away and helped without being asked. "Rachel, we'll pick Paul up from school today," Lauren would say on days when James had treatments. "Don't worry about dinner either. I made extra lasagna." At night, Paul would sometimes pull on my sleeve while I tucked him into bed. His eyes were full of worry and hope. "Mom, when is Dad going to get better?" he'd ask. I never knew how to answer that. How do you tell a child that his dad is dying? So I would just stroke his hair and say, "The doctors are doing their best, sweetie." My own parents, Christina and Jacob, were a different story. They lived just as close as James's parents, but it felt like they were miles away. "Mom, can you pick up Paul from school today? James had a bad reaction to chemo, and Lauren has a doctor's appointment," I asked one day. "Oh, Rachel, I'm really sorry," my mom replied. "But we promised to help your sister with apartment hunting today. You know how Jacqueline gets when she's stressed." It was always about Jacqueline. That's how it had been my whole life. When I was 7, my parents didn't come to my school play because Jacqueline had a cold. At my high school graduation, they left right after the ceremony to go to Jacqueline's dance recital, even though she was just part of the group and not the main dancer. Over the years, I got used to being second. James became my real family, and his parents treated me more like their daughter than my own parents ever did. So when James's health got worse last month, I prepared myself for the end, surrounded by the people who truly cared about me. The night James died, I was holding his hand. His breathing had slowed down hours earlier, and the hospice nurse had told me it wouldn't be long. "Rachel," he whispered, his voice barely there. "Take care of Paul. You're the strongest person I know." Those were his last words. I sat there for hours, still holding his hand as it slowly turned cold. I couldn't believe that the man I had spent 13 years with was really gone. Lauren and Brian, James's parents, came to the hospital within an hour after I called. Their faces were filled with the same pain I was feeling. "We're here, sweetheart," Lauren said as she hugged me. "We'll always be here." That night, I sent a message to my mom. "James passed away tonight." An hour later, she replied with just 2 words. "That's terrible." No phone call. No asking how Paul and I were. No offer to come over and help. Just a short message. But I was too numb to care. There was a funeral to plan, a son to comfort, and a broken life I had to somehow put back together. The days after James's death felt like a blur, making funeral plans, signing papers, and trying to explain to Paul that his dad wasn't coming home. Lauren and Brian helped with everything. They made the phone calls when I couldn't speak and sat with Paul when I didn't know how to answer his questions. I felt like I was drowning. The funeral home needed answers about the service, relatives were calling asking for directions, and I still had to pick up a suit for Paul. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours at a time since James passed away. "I need to ask my parents to watch Paul," I told Lauren as we sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by sympathy cards. "You and Brian are already doing so much." I drove Paul to my parents' house, practicing what I would say. When we got there, my mom opened the door wearing a jacket and holding her purse. She looked like she was ready to leave. "Rachel, this isn't a good time," she said, not even inviting us in. "We're just heading out." "Mom, please. It's only for a few hours. I need to finish everything for the funeral," I begged. "We've had these plans for weeks," my dad added, stepping beside her. "We can't cancel now." Before I could say anything else, they both stepped outside and locked the door behind them. "We really have to go," my mom said firmly. "I'm sure you can find someone else." They walked to their car and drove off without even saying goodbye to Paul, who stood there quietly, hurt and confused. I called my friend Isabella, who immediately said yes to watching him. After I dropped Paul at her place, I couldn't help myself. I drove past my parents' house on the way home. Their lights were on, and Jacqueline's red Mazda was in the driveway. "So that's their big plan?" I muttered, letting out a bitter laugh. They weren't busy. They just chose to spend time with Jacqueline instead of helping me. Again. That evening, I sent a message in our family WhatsApp group. "James's funeral is at 10 a.m. on Saturday at Greenwood Chapel. There will be a small reception afterward." I saw the read receipts appear next to my parents' and Jacqueline's names. No one replied. The night before the funeral, I was so anxious that I called my mom directly. "Mom, you saw my message about the funeral tomorrow, right? It starts at 10. There was a short pause. "Oh, Rachel, I'm sorry," she said. "But we can't come." Jacqueline made a lunch reservation at Emilio's to celebrate her promotion. "It's at noon, and we already said we'd be there." I almost dropped the phone. "Mom, this is James's funeral." "James, the one who helped pay to fix your roof when it caved in 4 years ago. James, who's been part of our family for over 11 years. "That was a long time ago, Rachel," she said coldly. "We need to focus on the living, not the dead. Jacqueline needs our support right now." Before I could say another word, she hung up. I quickly called Jacqueline, my hands shaking with anger and disbelief. "Hey," she answered, sounding annoyed that I was bothering her. "Jacqueline, Mom told me you're having a party tomorrow at the same time as James's funeral. Can't you move it, or at least delay it a little, so they can come to the service first?" "No way," she said with a laugh. "I can't change the reservation now. Everyone has already confirmed, and this promotion is a big deal. It's not like I can just move a funeral or whatever." "A funeral or whatever?" I said, my voice rising. "Jacqueline, my husband is dead. James, the man who paid for your entire college education." "That was a long time ago," she replied. "Look, my promotion is more important than some funeral." People die every day. Then she hung up. I stood in the kitchen, holding the phone, completely shocked. A moment later, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from my mom. Stop pressuring your sister. Her celebration is more important than a funeral. She's worked hard for this promotion. The day of James's funeral was sunny and bright, which felt like a cruel joke considering how broken I felt inside. The service was simple and beautiful, just the way James would have wanted it. He never liked big, showy things. The small chapel was filled with people who truly cared about him, friends, neighbors, co-workers, and most of all, his family. During the eulogy, I spoke about how kind and generous James was. I talked about how deeply he loved Paul. Paul sat between Lauren and Brian, holding their hands as he cried quietly. After the service, many people came up to me to say kind words and offer support. A few of them asked where my parents were. I was surprised not to see your folks, said one of James's old college friends. Are they not well? They had something else planned, I said coldly, not wanting to explain. Lauren noticed how uncomfortable I was and quickly changed the subject, guiding the conversation away from my parents. That night, after everyone had left, I sat alone in the living room surrounded by sympathy cards and flower bouquets. The house felt painfully quiet without James. The silence hurt. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Jacqueline. Hope the funeral went okay. Mom posted pictures from my party. I got promoted to senior account executive. No sympathy. No mention of James. Just a message about her party, filled with smiley faces and celebration emojis. I didn't reply. I just turned off my phone and went upstairs to check on Paul. He was fast asleep, holding the teddy bear James had given him for his last birthday. I climbed into bed next to Paul, finding comfort in the sound of his soft breathing. For the next week, I felt like I was walking through a cloud. Everything felt heavy and blurry. Lauren and Brian came by every day. They brought food, took Paul to the park, and helped me go through James's things. My own parents didn't call. Not once. They didn't check on Paul, and they didn't ask how I was doing. Nothing. A week after the funeral, I got a phone call from James's lawyer, Mr. Eric. Mrs. Turner, he said kindly, it's time to go over James's will. He made very careful plans. Would tomorrow afternoon work for you? I agreed and called Lauren and Brian to come too. James had included them in the will, and I knew he would want them there. The next day, Mr. Eric arrived at exactly 3 p.m. He carried a leather briefcase and had a serious look on his face. But when he saw Paul, his expression softened. Your father talked about you all the time, he told Paul, gently shaking his small hand. He was very proud of you. We all sat in the living room, me, Paul, Lauren, and Brian, ready for the reading. I didn't expect anything surprising. James and I had talked many times about what he wanted, so I thought I knew everything already. But just as Mr. Eric was about to begin, the doorbell rang. Are you expecting someone else? Lauren asked, looking confused. No, I said, just as puzzled, and went to open the door. I nearly slammed it shut again when I saw who was there, my parents and Jacqueline, all standing on the porch with fake sad looks on their faces. What are you doing here? I asked sharply. We heard about the will reading, my mother said, trying to peek inside. James wasn't a stranger to us. We have a right to be here. A right? I repeated, shocked. You didn't come to his funeral, but now you think you have the right to be here? My father cleared his throat. Now, Rachel, let's not bring up the past. We're just here to support you. Support me? I said with a bitter laugh. That's a good one. Before I could stop them, my mother gently pushed past me into the house, with my father and Jacqueline right behind her. We're family, she said firmly, like that gave her permission. I stood there frozen, stunned at how bold they were, walking in like nothing had happened. When we entered the living room, Lauren and Brian's faces darkened as soon as they saw who had shown up. What are they doing here? Brian whispered. When I came back into the room, I was shaking with anger. I have no idea, I said, trying to stay calm. But I'm not going to cause a scene in front of Paul. Mr. Eric, always professional, raised an eyebrow and said, Shall we begin the reading of the will? My parents and Jacqueline sat on the couch across from Lauren and Brian. Paul sat beside me in a small armchair. The room was filled with tension. You could feel it in the air. I, James Brandon Turner, being of sound mind, declare this to be my last will and testament, Mr. Eric began, reading from a formal document. James had organized everything with great care. To his parents, he left $300,000 to help them enjoy retirement and to thank them for always being there for us and for him during his illness. We never expected this, Lauren said softly, her voice breaking. Brian squeezed her hand, holding back tears. Then came the main part. To me, James left our house, 2 city apartments I didn't even know he owned, and $500,000 in savings. These apartments bring in good rental income, Mr. Eric explained. James bought them as investments 4 years ago. I sat there in shock. James had planned everything so carefully to make sure Paul and I would be okay, even without him. As the lawyer kept reading, I noticed my mother's face change. She went from looking mildly sympathetic to clearly interested. Jacqueline suddenly sat up straighter, listening closely. When Mr. Eric finished, my mom clapped her hands. Well, this is wonderful news, isn't it, Rachel? You're quite well off now. The room went silent. Lauren and Brian stared at her, horrified. My mom continued, totally unaware of the mood in the room. With 2 apartments and all that money, you can help the family. Jacqueline's been struggling with rent, haven't you, dear? Jacqueline nodded quickly. Yeah, it's really expensive these days. And you've got 2 apartments just sitting there. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. James hadn't even been gone that long, and they were already after his money and property. You should give one of those apartments to Jacqueline, my father said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. What do you need 2 for, anyway? I stood up slowly, my fists clenched at my sides. Are you serious? I said, my voice shaking. You skipped James's funeral for a party. You ignored me and Paul for a week. And now you show up uninvited to his will reading, just to ask for his property. Now, Rachel, my father said in a calm, patronizing voice, there's no reason to be selfish. You're alone now, but you've got all this money. You should share it. Selfish. I repeated, my voice rising. I'm not alone. I have Paul, I said, my voice steady. And everything James is left is for his future. Every single penny will be used to give him the best education, the best chances in life. Everything James can't give him anymore because he's gone. I looked at my parents and Jacqueline. They glanced at each other, then at Paul, and for a moment, I saw something in their eyes that shocked me, almost like jealousy. You're being ridiculous, my mother snapped. Jacqueline needs help now, not some child who won't even go to college for years. Some child, Brian said sharply. That's your grandson. And his father just died. My mother's face turned red. Don't you dare tell me how to treat my own grandson, she snapped back. We've been in this family longer than you, and yet you've shown no interest in being part of it. Lauren responded coldly. We've been here every single day, helping Rachel and Paul, while you ignored them. That's enough, I said, raising my voice and losing my patience. Paul, can you go upstairs to your room for a little while? Take Mr. Eric with you and show him your model airplanes. Mr. Eric looked thankful for the excuse and quickly stood up. I'd love to see your collection, young man, he said kindly, taking Paul's hand. Once they were gone and out of hearing range, I turned to face my parents and sister. I didn't hold back anymore. How dare you walk into my house just days after James's funeral, a funeral you didn't even care to attend, and ask for his money? James worked hard his whole life to provide for me and Paul. He fought cancer for 3 years, and not once did you offer to help. You couldn't even watch Paul for a few hours. That's not fair, my father started to say, but I cut him off. No. What's not fair is James's spending thousands to fix your roof when it collapsed during the storm 4 years ago. What's not fair is us paying for Jacqueline's entire college education when you said you couldn't afford it. And now you think you deserve something? I took a deep breath and looked them in the eye. Let me make this clear. I will not give you any of James's money or property. Not now, not ever. Every penny will be used for Paul, just like James wanted. That's what will happen. My mother's face twisted in anger. You ungrateful brat. After everything we've done for you. I stared at her. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Name one thing. One real act of love or support. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unable to say a word. Exactly, I said quietly. I think it's time for all of you to leave, I said. The door slammed shut behind them, and I dropped onto the couch, completely drained. You did the right thing, Brian said gently but firmly. Did I? I asked. They're still my parents. Jacqueline is still my sister. Being related by blood doesn't make someone family, Lauren said as she sat beside me and took my hand. Love makes a family. Being there during the hard times makes a family. I nodded. I knew she was right, but the hurt of being rejected, something I had felt my whole life, was still there. Later that night, after Lauren and Brian had gone home and Paul was fast asleep, I sat down at my computer. A notification popped up. My mother had tagged me in a post on social media.
It read,
Heartbroken that my eldest daughter has become so greedy and selfish after her husband's death. She refuses to help her struggling sister, even though she now owns 2 city apartments and has plenty of money. Money has changed her. I stared at the screen in shock. The comments from relatives and family friends started pouring in, people who had no idea what had really happened. Don't let Rachel get away with this. Family should always help family. Poor Jacqueline, always struggling, while Rachel has everything handed to her. A wave of anger rose in me like never before. Even for my mother, this was a new low, trying to shame me publicly so I'd give them James's money. I took a deep breath and placed my fingers on the keyboard. If she wanted to share our family's private matters in public, then I was going to share the truth. I began to type. I've stayed silent for a long time, but since my mother has made this public, I feel the need to respond. 4 days ago, I buried my husband James, who died after a 3-year fight with stomach cancer. My parents and sister did not come to his funeral.
Why?
Because my sister scheduled a party for her job promotion on the same day, and they thought that was more important. For those who don't know, James helped my parents many times. He paid for major repairs to their home and covered Jacqueline's entire college education. But when he got sick and I asked them to help, even just to watch our son for a few hours, they always said they were too busy. Yesterday, they came uninvited to the reading of James's will. When they found out he had left money and property to me and our son, they immediately demanded that I give one of our rental homes to Jacqueline, saying, and I quote, "She needs it more than some child. That child is their 10-year-old grandson. He's just a little boy who lost his father. I'm not sharing this to hurt anyone. I'm sharing it because I'm tired of being seen as the bad person in a story where I've only ever tried to be a good daughter, sister, wife, and mother. James's money will be used exactly as he wanted, for our son's education and future. That's it. I hope this clears up the lies." I attached screenshots to the post. One showed my mom's message, where she said Jacqueline's party was more important than James's funeral. Others showed texts where they refused to help during his illness. My finger hovered over the post button for a few seconds. Then I clicked it. Within minutes, the comments on my mother's original post completely changed. Christina, is this true? You skipped your son-in-law's funeral for a party. I can't believe you expect Rachel to give away property meant for her son. Those messages are shocking. How could you say a party is more important than a funeral? Calls and messages started coming in that evening. Relatives and friends were shocked by what my parents had done. Many reached out to support me. My mom tried to comment, saying I was lying, but the screenshots proved everything. After a while, she deleted her post, but it was too late. The truth was out. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of missed calls from my parents and Jacqueline. I didn't listen to any of the voicemails. I blocked all their numbers. I didn't want to hear anything they had to say. Over the next few weeks, they kept trying to reach me. They sent emails asking for forgiveness, but still asked for money. They sent messages through mutual friends. They even showed up at our house uninvited. Each time, I stood my ground. I had made my decision. They were no longer part of our lives. They're never going to change, are they? I asked Lauren one afternoon as we watched Paul playing in the backyard. People don't change easily, she said gently. Not deep down, anyway. It's strange, I said. I used to think I needed their love and approval. I spent my whole life trying to earn it. But now, Lauren said, finishing my thought, you know your own worth. And you know Paul deserves better than to go through what you did. 7 months after James's death, life had found a new rhythm. Lauren and Brian were still deeply involved in our lives. They joined us for Friday dinners and helped with Paul's school events. I had started managing the rental properties James left behind. To my surprise, I actually enjoyed the work. The apartments in the city center turned out to be great investments. They brought in steady income and added to the savings I was building for Paul's future. I also used some of the money to invest in shares of companies James always believed in. It felt good to see the money grow and receive steady payments from those investments. As for my parents and Jacqueline, I sometimes heard news about them through other family members. They were having money problems. Jacqueline had lost her job, and my parents were complaining about the high costs of retirement. Every time someone brought it up, they would hint that maybe I could help them. My answer was always the same. I'm sorry they're struggling, but my responsibility is to my son. Some people said I was cold or unforgiving. Maybe I was. But when I looked at Paul, growing stronger, smiling more, and surrounded by people who truly loved him, I knew I had made the right decision. One night, as I tucked Paul into bed, he asked something that surprised me. Mom, do you ever miss Grandma Christina and Grandpa Jacob? I paused, thinking about how to answer in a way that was honest but wouldn't hurt him. I miss the kind of relationship I wished we had, I said softly. But not the one we actually had. He nodded slowly, like he understood more than a child his age should. I'm glad we have Grandma Lauren and Grandpa Brian. Me too, buddy, I said, hugging him. Me too. Some people will never understand why I cut ties with the family I was born into. They've never felt the kind of hurt I lived with, the constant letdowns, the unfairness, the painful truth that some people just can't put others first. But I understood. And more importantly, I had broken that pattern. Paul would grow up knowing he is loved, valued, and supported. He would be surrounded by people who showed their love through actions, not just words. People who were there when it really mattered. People who didn't ask for anything in return. Patricia and Karen were completely different, and everyone in their family knew it. Patricia, the older sister, was practical and hardworking. She spent most of her time drawing designs, making plans, and chasing her dream of becoming a top graphic designer. Karen, on the other hand, was full of energy and loved being the center of attention. Her cheerful personality and love for everything stylish made her a favorite among their parents and friends. While Patricia liked quiet nights with her sketchbook, Karen was always busy posting new fashion finds and perfect selfies to her growing social media fans. Their childhood home in Las Vegas, a small but cozy house, was always lively. But it was clear that most of the attention went to Karen. Whether it was her dance performances or the latest outfit she wanted, their parents always rushed to make her happy. Patricia often felt invisible. Her hard work was noticed, but quickly forgotten compared to Karen's endless needs. Their father would say, "You're so responsible, Patricia," like her independence was just a weight off their shoulders instead of something to be proud of. Meanwhile, Karen's ability to light up a room seemed to win her more than just praise. It won her silent favoritism. Birthdays and holidays made their differences even clearer. Karen would get fancy gifts that matched her interests, designer handbags, the newest gadgets, or tickets to big events. Patricia usually got practical gifts, like cash or tools for her career. She appreciated them, but couldn't help feeling her presence lacked the excitement that surrounded Karen's. Their mother would often say, "You've always been so sensible, Patricia. You understand, right?" And Patricia tried to understand. While she worked hard for everything she achieved, Karen seemed to glide through life without much effort. As Karen's fame online grew, so did their parents' admiration for her. Patricia didn't feel jealous exactly. She just quietly wished for the same kind of excitement and pride from her family. She wasn't asking for big gifts or loud praise. She just wanted her hard work to feel as important as Karen's sparkle. This was the way things always were. Karen, the shining star, and Patricia, the steady shadow. But as they grew up, the small cracks in their family began to grow wider, setting the stage for challenges that would test their bond and change their lives forever. Patricia and Karen grew up in the same house, but their lives were like two different stories. Patricia, the older sister, loved having a plan and staying focused even when she was very young. She could spend hours at her desk, drawing designs or reading books about art and creativity. Karen, on the other hand, was full of energy and loved being the center of attention. She quickly learned how to make every situation work in her favor. Certain moments from their childhood showed just how different they were. One Christmas, for example, Patricia had spent months saving her allowance to buy new art supplies. When Christmas morning came, she was thrilled to open a professional sketch pad, something she had really wanted. But before she could even thank her parents, Karen had already ripped through her huge pile of gifts, screaming with excitement over a brand new iPhone and a designer handbag. Their parents looked so proud, smiling at Karen as she showed off her presents. No one really noticed Patricia quietly flipping through the blank pages of her sketch pad. "It's perfect," Patricia said softly, but no one heard her. Patricia's serious way of thinking often confused her parents. One time, her grandparents gave her some birthday money, and her father asked, "What are you going to buy with it, Patricia?" "I'm saving for a new laptop," she answered proudly. Her father smiled, but his voice sounded a little surprised. "A laptop? Most kids would buy something fun." "I'd rather get something useful," Patricia said. But her father's small shrug told her he didn't really understand. Karen's way of living was the complete opposite. She lived in the moment and didn't worry about saving. She would sweetly ask, "Mom, have you seen the new limited edition sneakers? Everyone at school has them." And without thinking twice, their parents would say yes. Patricia noticed the pattern. Karen never had to save or wait for anything she wanted. It was always given to her right away, no questions asked. Meanwhile, Patricia's hard work was barely noticed. When she finally saved up enough money to buy her laptop, her family just gave a quick smile. "That's nice, dear," her mother said, before quickly changing the topic back to Karen's latest shopping trip. As they got older, the gap between them grew even wider. Karen became a star in school and on social media. Her selfies and posts were full of likes and comments, which only made her even more confident. Karen was always trying new hairstyles, trendy clothes, and flashy accessories. Their parents loved her boldness and creativity and always encouraged her, without worrying too much about where it might lead. Patricia, meanwhile, stayed focused on her goals. While Karen was out with friends or scrolling through social media, Patricia was either at the library or in her room, working on her designs and planning her future. Patricia didn't hate her sister's carefree life. It just wasn't her style. But it did hurt when her hard work was often ignored because Karen's charm stole the spotlight. One report card day showed this clearly. Patricia had gotten top grades in every subject, and she even had an acceptance letter for a special summer art program tucked in her backpack, excited to show her parents. But when she got home, Karen was already getting all the attention. Even though Karen's grades were just average, their parents didn't seem upset. Instead, they comforted her. "Sweetheart, don't worry," their mother said, brushing Karen's hair. "You're talented in so many other ways. Grades aren't everything." "Exactly, princess," their father added. "You have so much going for you." Patricia stood there in the doorway, holding her report card and acceptance letter, wondering if anyone would notice. When she finally handed them over, her parents gave them a quick glance. "Good job, Patricia. We're proud of you," her mother said without much feeling, then quickly went back to paying attention to Karen. Moments like these became normal in their family. Karen was the favorite, always in the spotlight, while Patricia worked quietly in the background, building a future no one really seemed to notice. Getting accepted into a top art school in Las Vegas was one of the happiest moments of Patricia's life. She had worked so hard, staying up late writing essays, applying for scholarships, and studying for exams. She had earned a full scholarship, and for the first time, she felt like all her hard work had paid off. Excited, she rushed into the kitchen waving her acceptance letter. But her mother barely looked up as she helped Karen apply eyeliner. "That's nice, Patricia." "Karen, hold still, I need to get this line perfect," her mother said. Her father looked over the top of his newspaper and gave a small smile. "Good job, kiddo."
"We knew you could do it," he said.
The lack of excitement hurt, but Patricia was used to it. She went back to her room, holding the acceptance letter tightly, and quietly promised herself that college would be her time to finally shine, even if her family didn't seem to care. College turned out to be everything Patricia had dreamed of, and even more. At college, Patricia was finally surrounded by people who thought like her. Everyone there valued hard work and creativity. Her teachers praised her creative designs, and her classmates often came to her for advice. Even though she was handling a full schedule, working part-time jobs, and managing tough projects, Patricia did really well. Every success, like a great presentation, getting her scholarship renewed, or getting a good internship offer, felt like a big win that she had earned all by herself. Meanwhile, back home, Karen's life stayed easy. After barely finishing high school, she announced she would not go to college. Instead, she wanted to explore creative opportunities. Their parents supported her completely, cheering her on. "College isn't for everyone," their mother said with a kind smile. "You're so talented in other ways, Karen. You'll find your path." Patricia found out about Karen's new plans during a phone call one night. "I'm thinking about taking some social media courses," Karen said, full of excitement. "Mom and Dad think it's a great idea." Patricia had her own exciting news. She had just gotten a top summer internship at a famous design company. But she knew Karen wouldn't really care. "That's great, Karen," Patricia said instead, hiding her feelings. As time passed, the difference between their lives became even clearer. Patricia focused fully on her studies and building her career. Karen, however, jumped from one idea to another. She tried beauty courses, started doing online influencing, and even began a fashion blog, but none of her projects lasted long. Still, their parents always cheered Karen on without question. Whenever Patricia visited home, she brought back stories of her successes, like the time she won first place in a statewide design competition. But her parents always gave small reactions. "That's nice, Patricia," her mother would say before quickly changing the topic to Karen's latest photo shoot or social media post. One day during a visit, Patricia overheard a conversation that confirmed what she had always felt. "Karen is so full of life," her mother told a family friend proudly. "She's our little star. And Patricia, well, she's dependable, which is good in its own way." Hearing that felt like a punch to the stomach, but Patricia didn't let it show. She had already learned that she couldn't count on her family's support. Instead, she focused all her energy on proving her worth to herself and to the world. By the time graduation came, Patricia had achieved more than she had ever dreamed. She walked across the stage with honors, her portfolio full of awards, and a job offer from one of the best design firms in Las Vegas. Her parents came to the ceremony, but they spent more time taking selfies with Karen than celebrating Patricia's big moment. Still, as Patricia looked out at the cheering crowd, she felt a deep sense of pride that no one could take away. She had made it, not because of her family's support, but despite not having it. Her college years showed her strength and hard work. It was a chapter in her life that proved she could create her own path, no matter what challenges came her way. Patricia's move from college to working life was smooth because of her strong work ethic and the amazing work in her portfolio. Getting a job at one of Las Vegas's best design firms was a dream come true. But Patricia didn't stop there. She was determined to prove herself even more. She worked harder than anyone else in the office, often staying late to perfect her projects. Her hard work and creativity were noticed. In less than a year, she was promoted to team leader, a big achievement that set her apart from others. It was a proud moment for Patricia, and she wanted to celebrate it in her own way. She decided to host a small housewarming party in her new apartment, which she had finally rented after years of saving. The apartment wasn't fancy, but every detail showed her taste and effort, from the carefully chosen decorations to the simple but beautiful table setup. On the day of the party, Patricia's co-workers arrived first. They brought thoughtful gifts and shared real words of congratulations. They admired her apartment and praised her success, making Patricia feel truly proud of how far she had come. For the first time, she felt like she was surrounded by people who really appreciated her. Then, her family arrived. Her parents and Karen came in loudly, bringing their usual energy and drama. Karen, wearing a designer outfit, looked around the apartment with a judging eye. "It's cute," she said, her voice filled with fake kindness. Patricia forced a smile, determined not to let Karen's comment ruin her night. As the evening went on, it became clear that nothing had changed. The same patterns from childhood were still there. Every time one of Patricia's coworkers congratulated her on her promotion or complimented her apartment, her parents would quickly change the topic to Karen. "Oh, did Patricia tell you about Karen's latest modeling job?" her mother interrupted during one of the conversations. "She's so photogenic. It's like the camera loves her," her father added. "Karen was born for the spotlight. Such natural talent," he said proudly. Karen, of course, loved the attention. She giggled and pretended to be shy. "Oh, stop it, Mom and Dad," she said, but her big smile showed she was enjoying every second. Patricia's coworkers gave each other awkward looks, clearly confused by how her family was acting. One of them, Kathleen, tried to bring the focus back to Patricia. "Your promotion is such a big deal, Patricia," she said warmly. "You're a natural leader." But before Patricia could even answer, her mother interrupted again. "Speaking of big deals, Karen was just invited to an exclusive gala next weekend. Isn't that exciting?" The way Karen kept getting all the attention was nonstop. By the end of the night, Patricia felt like her achievements had been completely pushed aside at her own celebration. Her co-workers, noticing how she felt, tried to cheer her up as they were leaving. "You've done something amazing here, Patricia," Kathleen said with a kind smile. "Don't let anyone take that away from you." After the last guest left, Patricia stood alone in her apartment, surrounded by empty glasses and used napkins. She felt both proud and frustrated. She had built her life step by step with hard work, but it seemed like her family still couldn't, or wouldn't, see her success for what it really was. The housewarming party wasn't just supposed to be about the new apartment. For Patricia, it was meant to be a moment where all her sacrifices were finally recognized. Instead, it became another reminder of the family patterns she had tried so hard to move past. In the weeks that followed, Patricia threw herself even harder into her work. She knew now that she couldn't count on her family for support or recognition. So she focused on building the life she wanted, completely on her own terms. Her hard work paid off. A few months later, she got promoted again, this time becoming the youngest department head in the company's history. When the announcement was made, her boss, Mr. Mark, called her into his office. "Patricia, your work has been outstanding," he said with a proud smile. "You haven't just met our expectations. You've gone far beyond them. That's why we're offering you a spot in our employee housing program. You'll be able to buy your own apartment at a big discount." Patricia was overwhelmed with gratitude. After so many years of sacrifice and hard work, she was finally seeing her dreams come true. Signing the papers for her very own apartment felt like a dream she had worked so hard to reach. This time, though, Patricia decided not to throw a party. She had learned something important. Her family wasn't able to celebrate her success in the way she needed them to. Instead of having a big party, Patricia invited a small group of close coworkers for a quiet dinner. As they sat around her new dining table, raising their glasses to celebrate her success, Patricia felt truly happy. Her success was no longer about proving anything to her family. It was about proving to herself that she could build a life she was proud of, a life that no amount of favoritism or being overlooked could take away. Meanwhile, Karen's life seemed to reach its highest point when she announced she was getting engaged to Kevin, a rich and powerful businessman from an important family. The news brought huge excitement at home. Their parents were glowing with pride. "He's everything a parent could hope for," their mother said, already dreaming about the fancy wedding. Patricia stood quietly in the background, offering her congratulations, but her words were lost in the endless talk about dresses, venues, and guest lists. The wedding was huge, a grand event held at one of Las Vegas's most expensive hotels. Karen looked stunning in her designer dress, the perfect bride that everyone adored. Their parents proudly introduced themselves to every guest, acting like Karen's wedding was the best thing they had ever achieved. Patricia felt out of place among all the glitter and noise. As she stood in a corner sipping champagne, she wondered if any of her achievements would ever get such a celebration. Her promotions, her hard work, her new apartment, none of it seemed to matter as much as Karen's big day. After the wedding, Karen's life continued to be like a dream. Kevin spoiled her with expensive gifts, luxury vacations, and endless shopping sprees. Karen's social media was filled with pictures of her glamorous life, sparkling jewelry, designer clothes, and fancy parties with Las Vegas's richest people. Their parents kept praising her. "Karen is living the dream," their father often said while looking at her latest posts. Meanwhile, Patricia found it harder and harder to feel connected to her family. Every time she called home, all they talked about was Karen's life. There was never much room to talk about Patricia's own achievements. "You should learn from your sister," her mother joked once. "She really knows how to enjoy life." But Patricia didn't want Karen's life. While Karen loved luxury and attention, Patricia felt proud of her independence and everything she had earned through hard work. Still, the constant comparisons and being overlooked started to weigh heavily on her. Not wanting her family's favoritism to define her, Patricia pushed herself even harder at work. She focused on her career, climbing higher in her company and earning respect from co-workers who saw her for who she truly was, a talented and hardworking professional. Patricia knew her path wasn't flashy or full of luxury, but it was her own, and that was what mattered most. Karen's perfect-looking life fell apart one ordinary Friday morning. Patricia got a panicked call from her mother, whose voice was shaking. "Ashley, it's Karen," her mother cried. Kevin left her. He called her shallow and said she only cares about spending his money. He even said he thinks she's stupid. Patricia froze. She felt shocked, worried, and, if she was being honest, a small feeling of satisfaction. But she quickly pushed that feeling away. "I'll come over," she said, grabbing her car keys. When Patricia arrived at her parents' house, it was complete chaos. Karen was in the living room, her mascara running down her cheeks, her expensive clothes messy and wrinkled. She kept switching between crying uncontrollably and throwing anything she could grab, vases, pillows, even picture frames. "He can't do this to me," she screamed. "I'm Karen. I'm perfect. How dare he?" Their parents rushed around her, trying to calm her down. "Sweetie, please," their mother begged. "We'll fix this." "I'll buy you a new dress, princess, anything you want," their father added. Patricia stood quietly in the doorway, watching it all like an outsider. She didn't feel like she belonged there anymore. As days passed, Karen's tantrums only got worse. She demanded expensive gifts to make herself feel better, and their parents, desperate to see her happy again, gave her whatever she asked for. One evening, after yet another meltdown, Patricia finally spoke up. "Maybe," she said carefully, "Karen should think about getting a job. It might help her focus and understand the value of money." The room went completely silent. For a moment, Patricia thought maybe, just maybe, they would agree. But then Karen's face twisted in anger. "A job? You want me to work like you? Like some nobody?" Karen shouted, full of anger and disgust. Before Patricia could even answer, Karen burst into tears and ran upstairs, slamming the door so hard the whole house shook. Their parents immediately turned on Patricia. "How dare you?" her mother hissed. "Your sister is going through a terrible time, and you insult her like that?" Patricia was stunned. "I didn't mean it that way," she tried to explain, but they weren't listening. "Get out," her father said sharply. "Leave right now," her mother pointed to the door. "And don't come back until you can be supportive of your sister." Without another word, Patricia grabbed her purse and left. As she walked into her own apartment, her safe place, She felt a wave of emotions crash over her. Sadness at being pushed away by her family, anger at their endless favoritism, and, strangely, a feeling of relief. For the first time, Patricia clearly saw how toxic her family had been all these years. That fight with her parents was a turning point. She finally understood that no matter how hard she worked or how much she achieved, she would never be enough for them. Not compared to Karen. Instead of feeling sad about their unfairness, Patricia decided to focus on her own life. But the break in the family grew deeper. Karen's behavior got even worse. She refused to admit she had done anything wrong in her marriage and kept demanding her parents' full support. The financial pressure started to show. Her parents dipped into their savings and even sold some of their things to keep paying for Karen's expensive lifestyle. Patricia watched all of this from a distance, feeling both pity and frustration. She wanted to help, but she knew it would only make things worse. Her family wasn't ready to face the truth, and Patricia was no longer willing to hurt herself just to get their approval. As painful as it was, Patricia began to pull away from them. She had spent her whole life trying to earn their respect. Now she realized that respect was something they simply couldn't give. It broke her heart, but it also gave her the freedom to live for herself at last. While her family stayed trapped in the chaos of Karen's life, Patricia focused on building a life that truly belonged to her. For the first time, she felt peaceful, knowing that her worth didn't depend on their praise. In that peace, she found the strength to move forward. Patricia's chance to truly escape came through an unexpected opportunity. Her company held a yearly contest, and this year's prize was amazing, a fully paid trip around the world on a cruise. When Patricia's name was announced as the winner, she felt shocked and thrilled. For the first time ever, she had a chance to step away from work stress and her family's heavy expectations. But her parents' reaction wasn't supportive at all. "You're so selfish," her mother scolded when Patricia shared the news. "Karen is struggling, and you're running off to have fun around the world? How could you be so heartless?" Patricia took a deep breath, holding back the words she wanted to say. "I earned this trip," she said calmly. "I'm going, and I'm not giving it up." She packed her bags and turned off her phone, for the first time in years, truly choosing herself. Patricia boarded the cruise ship feeling a freedom she hadn't felt in a very long time. Every new place brought a fresh adventure, watching sunsets over the Mediterranean, exploring old ruins in Slovakia, and walking through busy markets in Europe. For the first time, she wasn't Patricia the responsible one, or Patricia the ignored daughter. She was just herself. The time away gave Patricia the clear thinking she had been needing. She realized that her family's approval didn't decide her worth. It was her hard work, her independence, and her strength that truly defined her, not their quick and shallow praise. When the cruise ended, Patricia came back home feeling fresh and stronger than ever. But her peace didn't last long. As she walked up to her apartment, she noticed something was wrong. Inside, the same chaos she had escaped months ago was waiting for her. Karen was lying on her couch, surrounded by shopping bags and empty food boxes. Karen barely looked up when Patricia came in. "Oh, you're back," Karen said casually. "I needed a change of scenery, so I used the spare key you had." Patricia froze. Her heart sank even more when she realized her car was missing from the parking lot. A panicked call to her parents gave her the ugly truth. "We sold it," her mother said like it was no big deal. Karen needed cheering up, so we used the money to take her shopping. For Patricia, this was the final straw. She knew she couldn't let her family's chaos control her life anymore. This time, she was ready to fight for her peace, and for herself. Patricia had always been the quiet, dependable one, the sister who stayed away from fights and worked hard to build her own path. But as she stood there, staring at the mess Karen made and thinking about how her parents sold her car without even asking, something inside her broke. All the years of frustration, hurt, and being taken for granted boiled up to the surface. This time, she wasn't going to stay silent. The next morning, she called her parents. "You had no right to sell my car," Patricia said, her voice shaking but strong. Her mother's cold answer stung. "We're family, Patricia. What's yours is ours. Stop being so selfish. Her father added. Karen needed cheering up. You should understand that. But Patricia didn't back down. No, she said, her voice even stronger now. I've spent my whole life understanding, sacrificing, and being ignored. Not anymore. You crossed a line, and I'm done letting you take advantage of me. Without waiting for their answer, Patricia hung up the phone. She knew what she had to do next. She needed to take legal action. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about taking back her independence and setting boundaries her family couldn't ignore. Patricia hired a lawyer and filed a lawsuit against her parents for the value of her car. The process was tough. Talking about years of emotional manipulation and financial abuse in a courtroom was exhausting but also freeing. As expected, her parents were furious. They called her ungrateful, heartless, and said she was the one breaking the family apart. Karen also played the victim, accusing Patricia of being jealous and mean. But Patricia stayed strong. The evidence was clear, and in the end, the judge ruled in her favor. Her parents were ordered to pay her back, and they had to sell their house and move into a smaller apartment. The victory felt bittersweet. You've ruined us, her mother said coldly the last time they spoke. But for the first time, Patricia didn't care. She had finally chosen herself over their approval. After the lawsuit, Patricia made the hard decision to cut all ties with her family. It wasn't easy, but it was the right choice. Free from their toxic behavior, she focused on building a life that truly belonged to her. With every step forward, she felt lighter, stronger, and more in control of her own future. That chapter of her life, the one filled with hurt and struggle, was closed. A new chapter had begun. Sitting by the window of her new, modern apartment, Patricia looked out at the Las Vegas skyline. The city lights sparkled against the night sky, a reminder of the life she had built, step by step, with strength and determination. The weight of her past no longer sat heavy on her shoulders. For the first time, she felt truly free. Her journey hadn't been easy. From years of living in her sister Karen's shadow to fighting for even the smallest bit of recognition, Patricia had learned one important lesson. Her worth was never tied to anyone else's approval. It was her hard work, her independence, and her courage that defined her. When she thought about her family now, she felt no anger. Instead, she felt a quiet acceptance. Walking away from them had been painful, but it was necessary to protect her own peace. Her life now was completely hers, free from anyone else's control. As she sipped her tea and smiled to herself, she knew she had earned this moment of peace. Her path hadn't been perfect or easy, but it was hers. And that made all the difference. The future felt bright, not because someone else said so, but because Patricia had finally learned to value herself. I stood there, shocked, as flames swallowed my wedding dress. The beautiful ivory gown that took 7 months to make was now burning into a black, melted mess. In front of me stood Hannah James, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, holding a lighter in her polished hand. Her face was twisted with anger and pride. "Now you can't marry my son," she shouted, her voice high and crazy. "Walter needs someone from our world, not some nobody from the poor side of town." She threw her fancy purse over her shoulder, looking very proud of what she had done. "My name is Julie Powell, and at 26 years old, I never thought I would be standing there, watching my wedding dress burn just 40 minutes before the ceremony." My 3 bridesmaids stood frozen in place, their lavender dresses looking strange against the burned fabric at my feet. "Mrs. James," I said, my voice calm as I picked up my phone, "you have no idea what you just did." She laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "What I did was save my son from making the worst mistake of his life. You think going to community college and working at a small ad agency makes you good enough for a James? Walter belongs with Cheryl Hines. Her father owns half of downtown Indianapolis." I pressed a button on my phone, keeping my eyes on her. Abigail, one of my bridesmaids, quickly opened a window to let out the smoke filling the room. Hannah waved her hand like it was nothing. "The wedding's over," she said. "I'll just tell everyone you got scared and ran away. Walter will be sad for a little while, but he'll get over it. Are you sure about that? I asked, turning my phone so she could see the screen. On it was a live video of the wedding area, the neat rows of white chairs, the flower-covered arch, and the big screen at the front. Right now, that big screen was showing everything happening in this room. Hannah setting my dress on fire, the smoke, and her angry face. Her face went pale. What is that?" she stammered. "The wedding live stream," I said. I spoke calmly. The live stream has been running for the past 30 minutes. It's for Walter's grandparents in Tennessee and my sister, who is serving overseas. It's been showing everyone arriving, the musicians setting up. I paused and looked straight into Hannah's eyes. "And you, destroying my wedding dress and saying what you really think about me. Turn it off." Hannah screamed and jumped toward my phone, her fancy look falling apart. "You planned this. You set me up." Abigail stepped in between us. "Mrs. James, everyone just saw you commit a crime, setting a fire on live video. You might want to think carefully about your next move." My phone buzzed in my hand with new messages. Sophia, another bridesmaid, looked at the screen and gasped. "It's Walter. He's coming to the bridal suite." Hannah's face filled with panic. She quickly looked around the room, like she was trying to find a way to escape. "This isn't what it looks like," she said desperately. "I was just testing the fabric. Wedding dresses are supposed to be fireproof." Through my phone, we could hear the guests talking in shocked whispers. The live camera had shifted and now showed the crowd's reaction. Walter's father sat in the front row, looking cold and angry. Walter's best man was already running toward the building. But what caught my attention most was Walter himself. He wasn't standing at the altar anymore. He was running up the center aisle, his face full of shock and fury. "Julie," my bridesmaid Isabella whispered, "what are we going to do about the ceremony? Should we tell everyone to go home?" I looked down at my burned wedding dress, now just black scraps on the beautiful wooden floor. The smart, practical side of me, the side that worked 2 jobs to put myself through college, was already thinking about what to do next. "No," I said firmly. "The ceremony is still happening. Just differently." Suddenly, the door burst open. Walter stood there in his tuxedo, his eyes going from my face to his mother, and then to the ruined dress. Behind him, the venue manager and his father came in, both looking horrified. Walter's voice was low and full of anger. "Mom," he said, "tell me exactly what you did. I didn't just watch you burn Julie's wedding dress while saying she's not good enough for our family," Walter said firmly. Hannah's face changed right away. "Sweetheart, you don't understand," she said quickly. "I was protecting you. This girl has been after your money from the start. I was just testing her character." "Stop," Walter cut her off. "Stop lying. I heard everything." He turned to me, his eyes soft and full of regret. "Julie, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she would do something like this." I carefully stepped over the burned pieces of my dress and walked toward him. "It's just a dress," I said, even though we both knew it meant much more than that. "But your mother just showed what she really thinks of me, and of us, in front of everyone we know." Walter took my hands, ignoring his mother's desperate protests. "What do you want to do, Julie?" he asked quietly. "It's your choice." Before I could answer, Mr. James appeared behind Walter. His face was hard and serious. "Hannah, what have you done?" he asked, his voice low but sharp. "Kyle, please," Hannah begged. "You know the Hines would be a much better match. Their family has been part of Indianapolis's high society for generations." She glanced at me with a sneer. "Unlike Julie, who only has hard work and determination." Mr. James shook his head, looking disgusted. "You've gone too far this time." Meanwhile, my phone kept buzzing with new notifications. I glanced down and saw messages pouring in from guests who were watching everything live. The venue coordinator stood nervously in the doorway. "Miss Powell," she said carefully, "the guests are asking what's happening. Should we make an announcement?" I looked once more at the burned remains of my dress, then at my bridesmaids standing in their lavender dresses. A new idea began to form in my mind, a way to turn Hannah's sabotage into something even better. "Tell them there's been a change of plans," I said. But the ceremony will still happen in 30 minutes. Hannah laughed meanly. In what? Your underwear? You can't possibly go through with this. In my backup dress, I said with a smile. I spoke calmly, cutting her off. The room went completely silent. Walter looked at me, confused. You have a backup dress? He asked. I didn't, of course. But working for 7 months with difficult clients at the advertising agency had taught me one thing: always have a backup plan. I turned to my bridesmaid. Isabella, remember that photo shoot we did for Indianapolis Bride last month? Call Judy and ask if her sample dress is still there. Isabella's eyes lit up in understanding. The ivory dress with the lace on top? It should fit you perfectly. Walter's father stepped forward, pulling out his phone. I'll have my driver pick it up right now. Where is it? While they made plans to get the dress, I turned back to Hannah. She stood there, frozen, watching her whole plan fall apart. You really thought burning a dress would stop this wedding? After everything Walter and I have been through? I said. But everyone's watching, Hannah hissed, pointing at my phone. They all saw what happened. Yes, I said, nodding. They saw. And now they'll see what happens next. I turned to the camera, knowing all the guests were still watching the live stream. To everyone waiting, I said, thank you for your patience. The ceremony will be a little delayed, but love always finds a way, even when someone tries to burn it down. A loud cheer came through the phone speaker. The guests at the ceremony were showing their support. Walter squeezed my hand, his face full of pride. Mom, he said firmly, you need to leave. Dad will take you home. You're no longer welcome at our wedding. Hannah's face twisted in anger. You would choose her over your own mother? After everything I've done for you? After what you did today? Walter said, keeping his voice calm. Absolutely. The next 30 minutes were a blur of activity. Mr. James firmly asked security to escort Hannah out of the building, even though he looked sad about it. Judy from Indianapolis Bride arrived quickly, with not 1, but 4 beautiful sample dresses. The bridal suite turned into a mini fashion show, with my bridesmaids, the venue coordinator, and even a few kind guests helping out. This one, Abigail said, holding up a gorgeous ivory dress with delicate lace. It's perfect for you, and we can get it ready fast. The venue's seamstress, who was originally there just for small fixes, worked fast with safety pins and quick stitches, doing an amazing job. Meanwhile, Walter had gone back to the ceremony area to talk to the guests in person. Someone had moved the live stream camera to show the altar, and now everyone could see that, no matter what, the wedding was still on. I could hear Walter speaking. Today didn't start the way any of us expected, he said, his voice strong and calm. But Julie and I have always believed that it's not the perfect moments that make a marriage work. It's how you face the imperfect ones together. Everyone clapped after he spoke. I smiled as Isabella adjusted the borrowed veil on my head. There, she said, stepping back to admire me. You look absolutely beautiful. The dress wasn't the one I had planned to wear when I became Mrs. Walter James. But when I looked in the mirror, I realized it was just right. It was simpler, more elegant, and somehow stronger, just like me. It showed that I could adjust to anything instead of giving up. Mr. James knocked gently before walking in. His eyes widened when he saw me. Julie, you look beautiful, he said. Then he paused, looking upset. I want to apologize for Hannah. What she did was unforgivable. You don't need to apologize for her, Mr. James, I said kindly. You didn't burn my dress. He gave a grateful nod. Walter sent me to tell you that everyone's ready when you are, he said. Then he smiled a little. Oh, and your boss from the agency is here too. He's recording everything for what he calls the biggest viral wedding marketing story Indianapolis has ever seen. I laughed. Trust Zachary to turn even a disaster into a promotion. Working in advertising had taught me that the best stories often come from surviving the unexpected. The venue coordinator appeared at the door. We're ready when you are, Miss Powell, she said. The musicians are prepared, and we've adjusted the lights to match your new dress. Wait, I said as an idea popped into my head. The live stream is still running, right? When she said yes, I made a quick decision. Can we show the live stream in the ceremony space for a few more minutes? I want everyone to see us walking from here, not just see me appear at the altar. 15 minutes later, my bridesmaids and I were walking down the garden path toward the ceremony. Every step was being shown live to the guests inside. It wasn't a usual bridal entrance, but it was something better. It was a message. No angry mother-in-law, no fire, nothing could stop this wedding. As we got closer to the doors, I could hear the applause growing louder. Walter stood just inside, his whole face lighting up when he saw me. "Ready to get married?" he asked with a big smile. He took my hand and asked, "Ready?" "More ready than ever," I said, squeezing his fingers. The ceremony that followed wasn't the one we had practiced, but it felt more real than anything we could have planned. As I walked down the aisle in my borrowed dress, the guests stood up and clapped instead of staying quiet like they normally do. Their faces didn't just show the usual wedding happiness, they showed something stronger: respect, support, and pride. Walter's father stood proudly in the front row, sometimes looking over at the empty seat where Hannah should have been. His eyes met mine for a moment, full of silent support. Our officiant, Timothy Powell, no relation to me, even though we liked to joke about it, spoke from the heart. "Dearly beloved," he began, "we are gathered here today not just to celebrate a wedding, but to celebrate love winning over hardship. Julie and Walter have already faced their first big challenge as a couple, and they handled it with strength, grace, and love for each other. When it was time to say our vows, Walter surprised me by adding his own words. "I promise to stand by you," he said, loud enough for everyone, even those watching the live stream, to hear. "Even if, no, especially if, someone from my own family tries to come between us." When it came time to exchange rings, Walter suddenly looked worried. The rings had been with his mother before the ceremony. But Mr. James quickly stepped forward and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "I made sure to get these earlier," he whispered with a small smile. "Just in case." After we were pronounced husband and wife, the room exploded with cheers and clapping. It felt like all the tension from earlier had finally lifted. As Walter and I walked back down the aisle, I spotted Zachary, my boss, recording the moment from the side. He gave me a thumbs up, a small gesture that somehow felt both professional and truly caring. The reception in the Grand Pavilion's ballroom afterward had a feeling unlike any other wedding. It wasn't just about fancy decorations or perfect speeches. It was about real love, real support, and overcoming the unexpected together. This wedding didn't feel like the others I had been to before. Instead of quiet talks and usual wedding traditions, there was a fun, strong energy in the air. Someone had quickly made a special Snapchat filter with a picture of a phoenix rising from the ashes, with our names written underneath. "Your wedding is trending on local social media," Abigail told me as we walked into the reception. "People are using hashtags like Rising from the Ashes and Can't Burn Love." Walter's college roommate, Aaron, who worked in public relations, came over holding his phone. "The Indianapolis Plain Dealer wants a statement," he said. Their lifestyle editor saw the live stream. Her niece was a guest. "They're calling it Indianapolis's most resilient wedding." Walter kept his arm around me and replied, "Tell them we're just thankful for everyone's support, and that real commitment means facing challenges together, not running away from them." As the night went on, I noticed Mr. James talking seriously with different family members. You could tell by his hands and expressions that he was working hard to control the situation. During dinner, Walter's Aunt Marilyn leaned down and spoke quietly to us. "Kyle is very upset," she said. "Hannah was sent home, but now she's threatening to cut Walter out of the family business unless he listens to her. Kyle told her that after what happened today, she should be more worried about her own spot in the company." Under the table, Walter squeezed my hand. "Dad's always been the real strength of the family," he said. "Mom just never realized it because he let her think she was in charge." When we had our first dance, I noticed something else. Several tables at the front were empty. Those seats had been reserved for Hannah's country club friends, but they had quietly left after everything that happened. In their place, people from my advertising agency had moved forward, filling the room with real support and happiness. "Mr. James is doing a great job fixing things," Zachary said as he walked over with 2 glasses of champagne. He's personally thanking everyone for staying and letting Hannah's friends know, without saying it out loud, that they won't be missed. Walter nodded, watching his father move around the room, full of new respect for the man who had always quietly kept the family together. I think this is the first time I've seen him stand up to her in front of everyone, Walter said quietly. After 28 years of marriage, today was his breaking point. The wedding photographer, who had originally been hired by Hannah, walked over carefully. "Mrs. James," she said, then smiled and corrected herself. "The younger Mrs. James. I've captured some beautiful moments today, but I wanted to ask about the dress incident. Some guests took photos. Would you like me to ask them to keep those private?" I looked at Walter before answering. "Actually," I said, "I think honesty is the best way to handle this. It's part of our story now." Almost at the same moment, my phone buzzed. I looked down to see a notification. A short video of Hannah setting my dress on fire had already been viewed more than 30,000 times on a local Indianapolis news page. The comments were full of support, with many people sharing their own stories about dealing with difficult in-laws. "You might not have planned it," Zachary said, scrolling through the comments, "but you've started something big. People are really connecting with the idea of standing strong against toxic family members." Just then, Walter's cousin Kayla came to our table. She looked a little embarrassed but determined. "I just want you both to know," she said, "not everyone in the family agrees with Aunt Hannah. Most of us think she crossed a line that can't be undone." "Thank you, Kayla," I said, feeling truly touched. "That really means a lot." Later, Walter received a text from his father. He read it quietly, then turned the phone so I could see it. It said, "Your mother has locked herself in the guest house. She's demanding that I choose between her and that girl. I told her that after today, the choice is easy. We'll talk more when you're back from your honeymoon. Proud of you both."
Dad.
"Are you okay?" I asked Walter softly, searching his face for any signs of regret. "I'm better than okay," he said, giving my hand a squeeze. "For years, I watched Mom put down Dad, disrespect you, and control everyone around her. Today, everyone saw the real her. It's like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders." And so, the celebration went on, filled with relief, happiness, and a new sense of freedom. I noticed something amazing happening. Guests who had been stiff and formal at the start, mostly people from Hannah's side of the family and her social circle, were now relaxing. They were talking and laughing more naturally with my friends and family. Without Hannah's watchful eyes, the fake walls she had built between people were finally disappearing. The venue coordinator came over to me with a warm smile. "Mrs. James," she said, "there's something you should see." She led us to the entrance of the ballroom. There, set up on an easel, was a big photo frame filled with dozens of handwritten notes from the guests. At the top, it said, "Messages of love and strength for Julie and Walter." "Your bridesmaids organized this," the coordinator explained. "They asked guests to write messages of support after everything that happened." 1 week into our honeymoon in Portugal, Walter and I were still realizing just how much our wedding had touched people. We sat together on the private deck of our villa, looking at the crystal blue water, scrolling through our phones during our daily check-in with the outside world. "Dad says Mom's staying with her sister in Pittsburgh," Walter said, putting his phone down. "Apparently, Aunt Brittany is the only one who still believes her story, that she was just testing the dress fabric and everyone misunderstood." I smiled and adjusted my sun hat. Kind of hard to misunderstand someone yelling, "Now you can't marry my son," while holding a lighter, I said. The media in Indianapolis had fully picked up our story. What started as a wild wedding disaster had turned into a bigger conversation about dealing with toxic family members and building healthy relationships. Several women's magazines had even reached out, asking for interviews about setting boundaries with difficult in-laws. "Zachary says the agency got 4 new clients," I said, laughing as I showed Walter the message on my phone. "They're asking for the team with the wedding dress phoenix." Zachary had even asked if we'd consider joining a panel discussion about managing crises once we got back. Walter took my hand gently, brushing his thumb over my new wedding ring. "Only if you want to," he said softly. We can keep everything private if you'd rather. I thought about all the messages we had received from other couples dealing with difficult families. Maybe our experience can help others, I said. It's not the way I planned to start our marriage, but it's real. Walter finished smiling. Just like us. 4 months after our wedding, Walter and I went to the James Family Foundation's annual gala, our first big public event since we came back from our honeymoon. This event used to be controlled by Hannah, but this time, Mr. James had completely changed it. Nervous? Walter asked as our car pulled up to the Indianapolis Art Museum. A little, I admitted, smoothing my gown, a beautiful emerald green dress from Judy's boutique, the same shop that had turned our wedding story into a marketing campaign about resilience and second chances. Inside, everything felt different. Instead of the stiff, formal atmosphere from past years, there was now real warmth and kindness everywhere. Mr. James greeted us at the entrance, looking younger and much happier without Hannah's controlling presence. There they are, he said, hugging both of us. The couple who inspired our foundation's new program. He led us over to a display showing off the James Family Foundation's newest project, Rising Phoenix Grants, financial support for women rebuilding their lives after hard times. The foundation's logo had even been updated to include a small phoenix symbol. We've already approved funding for 20 women, Mr. James said proudly. Each one is getting a fresh start after facing tough situations. As we walked around and spoke to guests, I noticed something else. Many of the snobby social climbers from past galas were gone. Instead, there were real people here, people who truly cared about the foundation's work. Mrs. James, a young woman said, walking up to me. She smiled and introduced herself as one of the grant winners. Your wedding story gave me the courage to leave my toxic marriage, she said. Now, I'm starting my own business. Later that night, Walter and I stepped outside onto the museum's terrace to get some quiet time. He checked his phone and read a message. Mom's coming back to Indianapolis, he said, looking thoughtful. Dad says she's agreed to counseling if she wants any chance to fix things. I squeezed his hand gently. Whatever happens with your parents, I said, we'll face it together, just like we did with the wedding. Walter smiled and pulled me close. Some flames are meant to destroy, he said. Others just show what's unbreakable.